us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Energy bills could reach nearly £4,000 this winter as Russia cuts gas supplies.
Well, a very good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Thursday, the 28th of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen Dixon and this morning, Rosie Wright.
This is what's leading the news for you today. Energy prices are thought to reach about £3,850 a year this winter as Putin cuts gas supplies to Europe. The squeeze will mean the average customer could be paying £500 a month for energy in January in 1 month.
The 22nd Commonwealth Games kicks off today in Birmingham with an opening ceremony at the city's Alexander Stadium. More than 5,000 athletes representing 72 nations and territories will take part in 11 days of packed events. We'll bring you the highlights.
And in a first for the English legal system, TV cameras will broadcast from the Old Bailey. From now on, broadcasters will be allowed to apply to film sentencing in Crown Courts in England and Wales, but it is going to be highly restricted.
You can join any of our discussions this morning. Please do. In fact, you can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or drop us a tweet to @gbnews.
Well, our main news this morning is not one that's going to fill you with a lot of joy, I'm afraid. Energy bills could reach £3,850 a year on average this winter as Russia further curtails energy supplies to Europe.
So new estimates are warning that the price of your individual bill in January could be £500. The soaring price could mean millions choosing. We've heard this phrase so many times, but it is the choice people will make. Do I heat my home or do I eat my dinner?
Yeah, the National Grid is also warning today of the risk to Britain's power supply this winter. The company drawing up measures to urge people to use less electricity to try to avoid blackouts.
Well, let's find out more. With energy costs as well as inflation soaring, what knock-on effects does this have on people who are already struggling with the cost of living? Economist Vicky Price is in the studio with us this morning. Vicky, very good morning to you. This is going to start some people's day with horror. We were looking towards October when we know the energy price cap will change, and now it looks like January is going to be even more bitter.
Well, we don't actually know what the gas prices are going to do, but we're suspecting that indeed they will continue to go up because partly of what you mentioned, which is Russia cutting supplies to Europe and how it will affect us. Now, the question is, of course, whether we can rely on other sources of gas. We get it from Norway mostly, the extra gas that we need, plus, of course, whatever we can do in terms of renewable energy that can be used more in the homes. But there is a limit to do that. And of course, as we know, we still depend hugely on gas, I'm afraid, in terms of heating homes. And that's going to be the real problem for the individual households. So the question is, do you give them some support? And as we know, the Tory leadership candidates have all been looking at how to ease some of this cost of living pressures. And there is a possibility. And I think whoever gets the top job is going to have to do something about household electricity and gas bills, without any doubt, such as maybe VAT cuts or other measures.
It's going to have to be more, isn't it? Because when you look at this, it's one thing for politicians to say, oh, yes, there's a cost of living crisis. Oh, yes, people are going to struggle. £500 a month is just not sustainable for most people.
Well, unless, of course, you increase wages quite significantly, which is unlikely to be happening.
That would be inflationary, would it?
Of course. Well, it is inflationary over a period of time, yes. I mean, not immediately, of course, but yes. But we're seeing costs going up everywhere. So we've seen the cost of food going up very significantly. We've seen that, of course, both in the supermarkets, but also what is being charged for, as we know, and maybe you discuss that later, the cost of cheeseburgers at McDonald's, which has become such an important issue. But, of course, prices hadn't gone up for gas or electricity, really, for a very long period of time. And they hadn't gone up for food for a very long period of time, or for many of the services that individuals have been enjoying for quite some time. So we've got to bear in mind that we're looking at all these cost of living crises right now, but after a period where, in fact, many prices were either stable or falling.
Vicky, there doesn't seem to be consensus on how you solve the issue of cost of living.
It's absolutely true. And I'm afraid, as an individual country trying to do something about energy bills or food prices, there's very little you can do. Raising interest rates, which of course we've seen the US do very significantly again yesterday, and we're likely to see an increase, quite a substantial increase ourselves in August, is going to just make the cost of living even worse for people in the short term, because obviously whatever it is that they're borrowing is going to cost more. So that will slow the economy down over a period of time, and therefore maybe bring inflation down, but at a cost in terms of employment and growth. And that's the real dilemma. There isn't anything much that you can do if there is a war just in Europe, which is pushing these prices up. So obviously, if there is a solution to this in the near term, then we may actually see prices fall very significantly all of a sudden. And remember, we have had periods, particularly when there's been a slowdown in the economy too, of deflation in the UK, deflation in Europe. And that, in some ways, could be even worse than inflation. But
why? Why would deflation? Because I mean, it sounds like a dream at the moment, doesn't it? So why would deflation be worse?
Because nobody will want to invest in something which they see, the prices that they can sell the product at is falling over a period of time, because you don't make profits that way. On the inflation front, when inflation is high, of course you've got all your costs, but you can, as we've seen in a number of areas, raise your prices above the rate of inflation, possibly. And you hope, of course, that individuals have the money to also spend on the goods that you're selling, because they will be getting more wage increases as a result. But it is a fine balance. But deflation is a problem for many countries, and also in terms of the debt of individual countries as well. So if you have inflation, at least your debt is eaten away. If you have deflation, it gets bigger.
So, Vicky, for individuals who are waking up with horror at these headlines this morning, what are the best things people can do to try to mitigate the worst impacts of it?
Well, perhaps move jobs to places which are giving you above inflation wage increases, which I'm afraid are in the professional services area, and in the financial sector. The rest, I'm afraid, are going to have to see how we can all survive with less. And what we're seeing in Europe is the suggestion now, and the agreement of sorts, that consumption should be reduced very significantly by something like 15%. Now, yes, individuals can turn down the heating and so on, but it is a very, very difficult choice. So I'm afraid the government is going to have to step in, whichever way they can, to assist people, because obviously this type of increases that you're talking about on the energy front are completely unsustainable for the vast majority of households.
What difference would it make if the conflict between Russia and Ukraine was ended? Would that have an immediate impact, do we think, on what we're going through at the moment?
Well, yes, what we've seen already, for example, when you look at world food prices, they've been coming down in the last 3 months, which is quite interesting because there's been an anticipation that there will be some compromise which is reached. And then we got the compromise where grain was allowed to start to move out of Ukraine ports. Now, of course, then we got missiles attacking those ports, so that didn't really help particularly. But we saw wheat prices fall very significantly immediately on the announcement of an agreement. So yes, things could change. But on the energy front, so food prices, yes, could get a little bit better. On the energy front, it doesn't look likely because actually, if anything, the sort of conflict between the rest of Europe and Russia is, if anything, intensifying in terms of the energy supplies.
OK, Vicky, we've got to leave it there. Good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Well, it's not just energy, of course. Increases in fertiliser and transport costs have led to an 8% increase in fresh food prices, up from 6.2% the month before. That's according to the latest data from the British Retail Consortium.
Well, let's find out more. Let's get the perspective of Louisa Hobbs, who's the manager of MK Food Bank in Milton Keynes. Thank you very much for your time. Just talk us through how the day-to-day running of the food bank, in terms of the number of people you're meeting and the amount of food you've got to give to them, has changed over the last few months.
Yes, good morning. We've seen really a double impact with the cost of living crisis on the food bank in Milton Keynes. The first is obviously in demand of the people that we're supporting. We've seen a really big increase in people who need our emergency short-term support. So this time last year, we're about a third up on the number of people that have come to us for emergency food parcels. And we're seeing about 35 new families every week who we've never, ever heard from before, who are asking for help from the food bank, which they're finding incredibly difficult. It's a very embarrassing thing to have to do, to ask for help. But what I think we're most worried about is a lot of the people we support, emergency crisis food support isn't enough and they're needing longer term support. So we're having to find ways that we can support more people for longer because they haven't got anywhere to go. They're not going to get back on their feet. They've made every cut they can and still don't have enough, haven't got enough to heat and eat, as you say. So we're needing to look at how over the next 6 months, year, even longer, we are going to support those people on a longer term basis. And then the second side of the impact that it's had on us has been donations have dropped. So as everybody feels the pinch, people who would have routinely donated food to us can't afford to anymore. So we've found that where we used to cover our outgoings with donations, we're about a third short now. So we're having to make that up with buying food. So we're trying our best to fundraise, but we're finding it very, very difficult, and we are worried, very worried about this winter.
I was going to say, because whatever the situation is now for you, it is only going to get worse if these figures are correct by the end of the year. So you're going to have more people needing help and even fewer people donating food and presumably unable to donate any money as well for the fundraising.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have in Milton Keynes an incredibly strong community-minded spirit. We're reaching out to big corporate sponsors. We're looking for committed financial support where we can. But you're right, on a day-to-day basis, people who we support are already unable to make ends meet. And no one has their heating on right now. So we've spoken to parents recently who have already stopped paying for gas on their prepaid meters, and they're boiling kettles to wash their children. People are using their wash machines far less already. People are making all the cuts they can, and the winter hasn't even kicked in.
Can you explain to us what this sort of emergency food package is? So if a family arrives, one of those, one of 35 new families you're seeing each week, what kind of food are you providing them with?
Yeah, so our emergency food parcels are designed to last for between 3 and 5 days. And it's tins and packets. It's basic store cupboard food. We are trying to put things in that you can just heat up quickly, because obviously we're hearing feedback all the time as well that people don't want to use their ovens and their hobs for long because of the cost of energy. So our emergency food parcels are designed to be quick to eat food, nutritionally balanced, that you can eat for 3 to 5 days. But crucially, we can only give people 6 of these food parcels every year. It's not designed for use all the time. It's not to rely on. We do have a longer term offer where we call it a top-up shop, and it's a very cheap way of buying food, but people can only buy 20 items per week. So we're doing what we can to ease food costs for people, but it certainly isn't providing all the food they need for themselves and their families.
I mean, what sort of group are? I mean, presumably it's people who ordinarily you would view as being, perfectly able to provide for their families.
Yeah, the vast majority of people that we see do manage for the majority of the time, and they just slip under that line which you need to survive for a short period. And that could be for any number of reasons. So it could be for a period of ill health, it could be a family crisis, it could be an unexpected bill comes in, and people are just dropping under that line. They have a food parcel, a bit of support, they get back on their feet. That's how typically it would work. But of course, that line is much, much higher now. The line of which you need to survive has risen so high that it's opened up a huge new raft of people. So where we typically may have seen people who were unemployed, who were in receipt of benefits, we are now seeing so many people who are in work. They're working all the hours they can. There is no more work they can do, and yet they're still not making ends meet. They're still dipping underneath that line.
Okay, look, Louisa, we've got to leave it there. Really appreciate you talking to us. Thanks very much for that. And it is just, it's the reality. I think even for me today, this is where it bites, where you just think, actually, £500 a month by the end of the year, you don't have to be a family who is necessarily struggling to be hit with that sort of bill to suddenly be in crisis.
Or to think about the food you're
money.
buying, to think about how you're going to cook it so that you can afford to actually then eat it. I mean, that's just quite remarkable. And the food bank having to really ration out the food that they give to people. It's almost like those emergency food parcels don't really have the title emergency anymore, because for some people it's not like, oh, this is an emergency, this is my day-to-day. I need this every day.
Yeah. And the fact that things are just going to get worse, and donations are understandably falling off as a result because people can't afford to donate anything. Get in touch if you want to talk about that. We'd love to hear from you, and keep it all confidential if you like. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
We've got more on energy to come, but right now it's 16 minutes past 6. Let's bring you up to date with the other stories of the day. And train services are expected to be disrupted again this morning after yesterday's rail strike. The RMT, the Drivers' Union ASLEF and the Transport Salaried Staffs Association have announced a further strike on Saturday. ASLEF and 9 other rail companies have also announced planned industrial action on the 13th of August.
The 2 Conservative leadership candidates going head-to-head in Leeds tonight in the first of 12 Tory regional hustings. Tax and the cost of living expected to be the big battlegrounds as Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss tour the country, hoping to secure party members' votes.
England are going to face Germany at Wembley in the Euro 2022 final this Sunday. 8-time European champions Germany beat France 2-1 in yesterday's match.
Now, athletes from across the Commonwealth are gathering in Birmingham this morning for the official ceremony which kicks off the 22nd Commonwealth Games.
More than 5,000 athletes representing 72 nations and territories are set to compete in 19 sports, 280 medal events over a packed 11 days.
Well, someone who's very sporty is our South West of England reporter, Jeff Moody, who's been to the University of Bath, where some of Britain's top young athletes have been training in the hope of bringing back gold.
It's the calm before the storm. Training's done, the athletes safely dispatched to Birmingham. Now the team at the University of Bath can only wait and hope.
I'm hopeful that they'll do very, very well. Following on from the Olympics last year, where we had great success, I'm optimistic that the Bath-based athletes will perform very well.
And there's a lot of them. 24 athletes who currently train and study at the university have been selected to represent their country. They're competing across 8 different sports, from netball to swimming.
It's a huge boost to everybody, staff, students, the community that come onto campus. It's an inspirational place to be when we have those very high-level athletes training here.
Athletes like Holly Munro, putting aside her textbooks on applied forensic psychology to play hockey. Or Abby Galpin, an economics student who's competing in athletics. And Tom Dean, by day a mechanical engineering student, now swimming for Team England. Team Bath is hoping for gold in the swimming, and they're likely to get it too. 13 Bath athletes are taking part, making swimming their best shot at the top.
So as well as our facilities being used by performance-based athletes, our facilities are also open to the community and to staff and students. So my children come for swimming lessons here, and they will be having their lessons alongside swimmers like Tom Dean, which is very inspirational for them.
Team Bath aimed high at the last 2 Commonwealth Games, 44 medals in total. The hope now is Birmingham 2022 will prove the sky really is the limit. Jeff Moody, GB News.
Well, let's head to Birmingham now, where the city's preparing for today's opening ceremony. Our Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, is there for us. It's going to be quite a big day, Will.
Good morning. Yeah, if ever there was a time to be up and about in Birmingham, today is of course the day. Get out here, 6 a.m. in the middle of Victoria Square. Lots of TV news crews and lots of people who are clearly tourists who have come here for the Commonwealth Games in the middle of Victoria Square. Where we are right now, this is going to be the nucleus of this 22nd 2022 Games. There's also lots of places all around the city. You're going to see lots of people milling around, whether they're tourists or also athletes that are waiting to take part in different games. There's 5,000 athletes that have come from across the Commonwealth, from 72 different countries and territories. Of course, places that us Brits will know very well, places like Australia, Canada and New Zealand, as well as really culturally connected places from across the Caribbean, places like Trinidad and Tobago taking part. But then there's these really small island nations, particularly from the Pacific, places like Niue and Norfolk Island, populations of only a few thousand people that are sending teams of 3, 4, 5 different athletes who are really excited to be here. Sometimes they haven't won medals yet. A few of them have won a few medals, and so they're really keen to get their medal tally up today. But it's not just about those nations that are coming here celebrating the Commonwealth, celebrating the connection that they have to Britain, but it's also about Birmingham, because hundreds of millions of pounds have been put into the preparation of these Commonwealth Games. There's all sorts of different places for fans as well, so that people of Birmingham can feel quite closely connected to the actual games. So I think you're going to see lots of different things happening over the next few days, the next 10 days of the Commonwealth Games. You're going to see lots of people celebrating as they win those medals, but a lot of people in Birmingham celebrating the fact that this is just happening in their hometown.
Exciting, Will. Thank you very much. We'll be checking back in with you across the morning and across the next 11 days as well.
I'd love to know how excited you are by the Commonwealth Games. Let us know, gbnews.uk. I mean, it'd be great for Birmingham, actually.
I think it already is, doesn't it? I mean, it looks exciting. We could definitely hear some sort of cleaning going on in the background as the city has
preparing it
absolutely, you know, tip-top, so that everyone can, well, descend as the opening ceremony starts.
You've got to get that chewing gum up somehow. What you've got to do. Now, stay with us. Don't go anywhere, because from today, UK broadcasters will be allowed into the Old Bailey to film sentencing. Is it a good idea? Let us know what you think.
Cameras be allowed in courtrooms. It's a big conversation that obviously is being had, and that debate's been settled in the States, but certainly not here yet. We'll get the details for you after the weather.
Hello there and welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. It is going to be a largely dry day ahead this Thursday. There'll be some sunny spells and feeling quite warm as well. So let's look at the reason for this. Is high pressure is still dominating our weather pattern, meaning it is generally dry out there for the next 24 hours or so. And that's the case this morning. There'll be lots of dry weather across the UK under the influence of this high pressure, with the exception though of northern England, southern parts of Scotland. Cloudy start here with some patchy rain, but this should soon start to fizzle out. And then for many, a bright day to come, plenty of sunny spells developing, always thickest cloud across northern parts of England, southern Scotland, a few showers across central and northern parts of Scotland too, but lots of dry weather to come. And in those bright or sunny spells, temperatures lifting high teens, low 20s, and 24 or 25 as a high towards the London area. So feeling quite warm. Into the evening time, sunshine to end the day for many. Thicker cloud, though, developing across the central spine of the UK means during the early hours it could just become thick enough for one or two light outbreaks of rain. But elsewhere, generally clear skies holding on and keeping it dry. But despite those clear skies, it will be a mild night. Temperatures 11 to 15 in the towns and cities, perhaps a little bit lower in the countryside. So a sunny but mild start to Friday morning, with the exception of the Pennines and Northern Hills here. We could just see one or two splashes of light rain where we do have thicker cloud. But otherwise, dry day to come on Friday. One or two light showers developing across the southeast of England with the heat of the day. One or two later on across northern parts of England, southern Scotland. And a warm feeling day. Temperatures low 20s for many, locally high 20s, 26 or 27 towards the southeast. And into the weekend, we see an increasing risk of some rain, particularly across the north and the west of the UK. Temperatures around average, but staying above across southern areas. And here we could see highs approaching 28 or 29 by Sunday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We're trying to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back to Breakfast on GB News. Still to come on the programme, ahead of the release of new stats on forced marriage, we're going to be speaking to a survivor about her ordeal and also what can be done to end the practice. That's in about 20 minutes' time.
Now at 8:45, we're going to talk to legendary double Grammy award-winning musician and Mr. Boombastic himself, Shaggy, about his appearance at the UK's biggest reggae festival in Milton Keynes this weekend.
And please do get in touch with us this morning. A couple of ways you can do that. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews. Lots of you getting in touch about cost of living, because our main story today is what's happening to our energy prices, so keep those messages coming in.
Yeah, there's a real sense of desperation, actually, and it's absolutely understandable. John says people haven't got the kind of money, so they can't pay the increases, and the notion that we'll simply get a new job just isn't achievable to everyone. I should think it's achievable for very few people, actually, just to say, I'm going to go and get a new job.
And well, Archie, very good morning. He says, I'm struggling with a state pension that I'm on. With the increase in bills and cost of living, I'll just have £80 left for food a month. I've also got a 17-year-old cat. I've been told I shouldn't have a pet, but there's no way I'm giving her up.
No,
I mean, those are crazy decisions that people are being told to make. You know, say, oh, if you can't afford a pet, don't have one. That's outrageous.
Well, you can't get rid of the pet that you've got. I mean, what are you going to do? Give them to a shelter? Well, who's going to pay for that? I mean, it's crazy. Tony in Bury St Edmunds says, it's all very well your expert recommending for us to cut back. We already have. We've insulated our home, but the bills still increase because the basic rates go up. It's going to be life or death because people can't afford to eat and heat. We're in a major crisis that the government is not addressing. And Frank says, surely we've got to start fracking rather than letting the public starve. And I think, Frank, there's a very big argument for fracking. Some very big arguments against it as well, it has to be said. But even if it was the answer, and we started to building the sites tomorrow, how long is it going to take to be up and running? Not quickly enough. This is the problem. Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea what the answers are. I really, really don't. But the problem is, there's a lot of you saying what we're not getting is answers from the politicians either at this stage, and something clearly needs to be done and needs to be done urgently now.
Keep your comments coming in, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, legal history is going to be made at London's Old Bailey today. Cameras are going to be allowed into criminal trials for the very first time.
Yeah, coverage is going to be restricted to the sentencing, with the first televised sentencing taking place later on today.
But will captured courtrooms be a positive or negative thing when it comes to the judicial system? Well, joining us now to discuss this is Chair of the Bar Council, Mark Fennells QC. Thank you very much for joining us. Largely, I know you're in support of this. Why? Why is that?
Well, sentencing is a complicated process, and we welcome the chance for the public to understand how it's done, why judges reach the decisions they do, and to simply have a better, so they can see how the criminal justice process works. We think it's a very good thing that the public will be able to view these events.
I mean, as you say, it's very complex, and it's based on, obviously, the verdict, but the evidence that has been heard. Well, if we're not seeing the evidence, will we understand the sentencing?
The way that sentencing remarks work is that the judge will summarise what's been heard in the trial. He'll set out for everybody listening, that now can include the public, the facts of the case, the aggravating features, the mitigating features, and he or she will explain why it is they're passing that particular sentence. When they pass a sentence, they follow sentencing guidelines that are set out by the Sentencing Council, and they follow the laws that are set out by Parliament. And the more that judges can explain that to the public, as well as to victims, their families, and the defendants, the better.
All of that information that you've just laid out is available to the public, just not in broadcast form. Why do you think it's important that we need to have sort of cameras in the courtroom for that part of the process?
Well, I think you know as well as I do that people enjoy watching things, listening things, seeing things, and that makes it much more accessible than the written word sometimes. And rather than ask the public to do their own exercise themselves, or perhaps to go to the court and listen to an entire case, which they could do, now they've got a chance to listen to a judge, sum it all up in a few minutes, and understand why particular sentences are being passed. I mean, there are guidelines for absolutely every kind of criminal offence, not all of them, but most, from abstracting electricity through to voyeurism, if you do the whole alphabet. And there's a lot of complexity there, and it's good that the public can see it happen, and we can maybe dispel some myths about the way judges sentence.
There's a danger, though, isn't there, with this? And you wonder if it's going to spread to the entire case, the entire court experience, which could happen perhaps in a few years, with this just being a first step. Isn't there a danger that it becomes a bit of a spectator sport, like it sometimes is in America?
I think that Judges and indeed our system here are very concerned to make sure it doesn't become a spectator sport. That's one of the reasons we're taking this very cautious first step. Those of us old enough to remember the televising some trials in the 90s in the States, let alone more recently, understand how cases can become a spectator sport, and we don't want the Crown Court used for entertainment. This is a matter of public education, public information, and confidence in the justice system. If the public can see and hear why certain sentences are being passed, they'll be more confident that the judges are doing the right thing for the right reasons. And that can only be a good thing as far as we're concerned.
It sounds to me like education is one of the key motivations that you've got for why this should happen. I was interested to hear that you said there were some sort of myths that the public held about sentencing. What are those?
Well, for example, the public assume that when judges pass a sentence, say, of 2 years, and the defendant is released after 1 year, that that's somehow the court's fault. But it's not. It's an early release law that's set out by Parliament. And so Parliament sets the framework of the laws and the judges apply them. And each time a sentence is passed, a judge will explain that. Similarly, if the judge is passing a sentence in a murder case, he or she'll say, "You're getting a life sentence, but Parliament obliges me to set a minimum tariff for this, a period of time before which you cannot be considered for release." And that can be starting at 15, 25 or 30 years, or indeed the rest of a person's life. And all of that set out in the law, and the judges apply it faithfully. And we think it's a good idea that the public will be able to follow it through, rather than not understanding the way the system works.
But forgive me, what you've just made absolutely clear is that system is pretty straightforward, and you've just explained it in 15 seconds. It doesn't require us to hear a judge say it every time for us to understand that. You've just done it.
Well, that's kind of you, but I'm not sure that everybody's listened to what I've just said and absorbed it and thought about it. The fact is, people will be interested in particular cases. This isn't going to happen in every case across the Crown Court. There'll be some cases of particular public interest where the broadcasters will apply to be let in, and then in those cases, when members of the public watch it, they can understand the whole framework. And that's what we hope will happen. We think it's a positive, good step, and will demystify the whole process.
OK. Mark Fennells, Chair of the Bar Council. Good to see you. Thank you.
Pleasure.
I'd love to know what you think about that. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Is it a step in the right direction, or is it almost a bit intrusive? I don't know.
Well, interestingly, Mark said it was kind of a cautious first step. It does make you think, OK, if that's step number one, what might come after?
Yeah. Trials as entertainment? I don't know. Or
education. That's the argument that's being put there.
Is it really? I don't know. I don't think people will be looking at it to be educated, really.
What we don't...
But do we have a right to... as members of the public say, you can go into any courtroom as a member of the public and watch it. So is it just the next step as far as that goes?
Yeah, do get in touch. You can tweet us, of course, as well, at GB News. Well, coming up, we're going to take a look through the papers. Joining us to do that, James Bosworth and Liz Kershaw. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Yeah, loads of you getting already on that court issue. Della says, has anyone thought of the victims? My brother was murdered. Our case was at the Old Bailey. It was bad enough seeing the public in the gallery. We wouldn't want to see our pain televised for everyone. Well, would they show are they literally going to show the defendant and the judge, or are they going to show a wider court view?
I think it's just the judge.
I don't know, maybe.
Well, Sean says it's a good idea. It should give us an academic, intellectual insight into our UK judicial process in action for major crimes.
David says it's going too far. Voyeurism for the public, watching people's emotions during some of the worst times in their life. Yeah, I get that as well. Keep your thoughts coming through. It's interesting how it's split like that so far. Anyway, time to go through the papers this morning. We're joined this morning by the legendary broadcaster Liz Kershaw and the author James Bloodworth. Good to see you both this morning. Liz, let's start with the Express, should we, and the cost of living, energy bills.
Well, obviously, this is a huge issue and it's in all the papers, but the Express has really gone big with it on its front page above every other thing to worry about at the moment. I mean, the average cost of gas and electricity was about £1,150 until relatively recently. And now by this autumn, winter, it could be £3,800, which is 3.5 times as much. I mean, it's bad enough because I know you pay by direct debit, don't you?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what the wise thing to do. I've never done that. I've just paid when the bill came.
It just evens it out over the year.
Yeah, but then they've got your money all year.
Oh, for a while, yeah.
And when my mum died, they order hundreds, EDF and people like that, order hundreds of pounds. They've been taking off a woman living alone in a large house. Their estimates were just outrageous. And we had to try and get all that back. Anyway, the point is, do you want a shock or do you want to pay monthly? But when you're thinking about people having a £500 a month direct debit, or a shock bill of nearly £1,000. I just don't know how they've got. People can't do it.
No.
They just can't do it. I mean, I just think about the people who are on benefits or on a state pension are going to through the social security system get these payments, not from Rishi Sunak. Hello. It's not his money. Stop trading on it. It's our money from the Treasury. So they're going to get that. But the people who are going out to work, with kids, who need to use a car to get to work because there's no public transport available, people on shifts, or people who drive a van, it's a couple, both working, maybe more than one job. It's just really crippling, and the low-paid ones are the ones who will suffer most because they don't get either the state's handouts or a large salary to deal with it.
Yeah.
But it's just mind-boggling, and it's not going to end. I'm always, me, people think, oh, she's a bit simpler. She's so cheerful all the time. People who know me. But I am a half-glass-full person, but even I can't see any good news about this. And Putin is going to use it as a weapon.
Oh,
he doesn't need to invade anywhere else. He can bring down the economy of Germany first, but practically overnight. So, anyway, it's going to be a hot water bottle up my onesie, and a log fire for me in one room for the winter, I think.
Yeah, it's awful. I mean, I just don't know how people are going to... People can't economise to save the money. They're just not going to have the money to pay this.
I've had a good idea. Remember when my shower burst and the water poured through my dining room ceiling?
And you came and used my shower.
I came round to yours every day for a month. I'm going to pretend my boiler's packed up.
Yeah, not a chance. You're not getting in. Tell you that for nothing.
Well, shorter showers may be on the horizon.
Well, yes.
And James, talk us through some really quite stunning headlines about how little rain we've had.
So, yeah, we're on record to have the driest January in 111 years. Which
July, I think.
Driest July in 111 years, yes. Which goes back all the way to the year the Titanic was launched. So that's how long ago it was. And they've already introduced a hosepipe ban in the Isle of Man. And, I mean, this is another sign, I think, of the impact of climate change, basically. I mean, the last thing we talked about was cost of energy bills, and I think that demonstrates how we need to move to greener forms of energy so we're not reliant on countries like Russia for our energy supplies, so we can produce that domestically. But I think the state of the weather, the lack of rain, the heat wave, these are all examples of how we really need to get on top of climate change, because it is starting to have a day-to-day impact on individuals in this country and all over the world. But at the moment, it's this summer really feels like a turning point in terms of the weather.
Does it? Can I just ask a genuine question?
Yeah, go on.
So the headline is driest July since,
I know what you're going to say.
1911.
Yeah.
And previous to that, it was 1836, just before Queen Victoria came to the throne.
Yeah.
1911, yes, we were filthy. It was the height of the industrial development revolution in this country, and buildings were black. There were killer smogs in London. Factories were pouring out soot, and the coal mines were running 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. But in 1836, not so much. It was a lot, the Industrial Revolution hadn't kicked off. So it's OK saying this is the driest July. Oh, it must be climate change. Well, possibly.
It's the trend, though. I think it's the trend,
Is this a trend?
Yeah, because if it's a single year...
No, sorry, maths. What's the trend between 1836, 1911 and 2022?
9 out of the 10 hottest years have been since 2003.
Hottest year since...
On record.
Since the current way of recording things was introduced in 1850. So I really resent... I'm all for getting the facts, but I really resent headlines like on TV News the other night, BBC, or in some of the papers today. Hottest summer ever, or hottest day, the other last week, 40 degrees, hottest day ever. No, this was a tropical country 10,000 years ago.
Yeah.
In medieval times, we had mosquitoes and swamps. The Romans introduced vineyards because it was so warm. In the Henry VIII's time, there were terrible droughts and periods of sustained killer heat waves. So let's just...
Wasn't that because there wasn't running water then, though? I mean, people didn't have water into their homes then at that time. So it's not really comparable today, where we do have...
Sorry, what's that?
Well, there wasn't a water system then, so it's not comparable to today.
How does water coming through the tap
in
your house affect?
Well, you can officially have a drought if people haven't got access to water because
There's
of the weather.
no doubt that water is very low, and we really have to be careful and conserve it. I mean, the way that we always, when I was growing up, gauged how bad the water supply situation was just by going on moors, playing out or driving across, and you go, oh, look at the dam, oh, the water's low, and you could see the cobbled sides that shouldn't be exposed. And you can see that now, and it's really worrying. And I personally am cutting back on water, and we all should be responsibly. There is a lack of water, and it could become more serious quite quickly because it happens. I remember my mum telling me the summer when she had me in a pram and she was about to have my brother 3 months later, and they all went up to the reservoir because this village that had been drowned when they built the reservoirs in the 30s had been exposed for the first time. You could see the clock tower on the chapel and the bell was still there, and there are all these spooky stories about it. These things happen. So, yes, give me the facts, and I'll be the first to say we must do something about it, and we must take charge of our own affairs and help for the common good. But don't give me headlines like hottest day ever and there's a trend in temperatures or water, rainfall when, it goes back before the Industrial Revolution. I went to the University of Reading. I went to the University of Reading. Quickly. I appeared on Sky News doing this paper review 5 or 6 years ago. I made some comment, probably similar to what I'm doing today, just asking questions, wanting facts. I was invited for the day to the University of Reading, which has a huge climate change department, massive funding for it. And we went back through data, back to 1604. And then I said, well, show me a pattern. And they couldn't. And I said, and have you applied historical events to these peaks in temperature or cold snaps? What do you mean? Well, like Krakatoa in 1865 caused 3 years of freezing temperatures and crop failure and famine. The reason there was the French Revolution was because there was famine across Europe because of volcanic activity. Let's apply all this before we get hysterical. There's a real issue with water, with temperatures, I get that. But let's not start beating ourselves up and scaring kids.
Yeah. Well, let us know what you think. GB Views at gbnews.uk.
James, do you have anything to chime in on that? Is it scary?
I want to scare the kids. No, I mean, I don't want to scare the kids, but I think it's important to be mindful of how much water you're using when it's not necessary with things like hose pipes, etc.
James, let's have a look at inflation, should we? This is in the FT, just to finish off on a cheery note.
Yes. So the United States Federal Reserve has increased interest rates. Basically, that's to try and damp down inflation. We have a similar situation here, but it's worse in this country with inflation. I think what worries me at the moment with this is we have two Tory leadership candidates who, I mean, I'm not a Conservative myself, but what worries me is Liz Truss, who's the favourite, is talking about tax cuts, which economic experts say could have a worse effect on inflation, could increase inflation really more than it is increasing already. And inflation is the thing that's really hurting people at the moment in terms of the cost of living. So, I mean, I think I would hope that the Tory leadership candidates in this country would pay some attention to what's going on in the United States, the Federal Reserve, the action they're taking, and see the impact their own policies could have on the cost of living this side of the Atlantic.
OK, got to leave it there. James, Liz, thank you very much indeed. You're out of time.
Thank you.
Liz. You've eaten it all up.
Next time.
I'll put you on for half an hour. It is 6:49. Let's bring you up to date with the headlines for you. And as we've been talking about, Britain's electricity system operator has warned of a scarcity of electricity come the winter. The body forecasts that capacity might narrow significantly towards the end of the year, but it believes it should be able to keep the lights on.
Legal history is going to be made today for Crown courts who'll be able to broadcast sentencing remarks in criminal trials for the first time. The Old Bailey in central London, they're going to be the first court in England and Wales to allow a live televised sentencing when the case of a convicted killer is heard later today.
Tom Daley is amongst those carrying the Queen's baton at the opening ceremony of the Commonwealth Games, I beg your pardon, today. The Olympic gold medal winning diver will help other British athletes kick off proceedings at the Alexander Stadium in Birmingham.
Now, later this morning, statistics on the number of forced marriages in the UK are going to be released, and despite becoming illegal in 2014, it's still an ongoing issue for thousands of Brits, many subjected then to modern slavery, rape and violence within a relationship.
Well, Tirtha Gupta is a barrister and expert in forced marriage and joins us now in the studio alongside Sunny Angel, who survived forced marriage. Good to see you both this morning. Sunny, can I start with you? Tell us your story.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Well, I was married in 1999, so it was quite a long time ago now. More than 20 years ago. So there wasn't a law then for forced marriage as it is now. So I basically share my story, so to give other people awareness. When I was married, the guy I was married to, he actually had some mental disabilities. He wasn't actually aware of what was actually happening to him. So he was more vulnerable than I was at the time. So I actually felt quite sorry for him. His mum would actually force him to rape me, which was really, really wrong. I mean, sometimes when we think of forced marriage, we always think about the girls being forced. We don't necessarily think about the boys being forced into marriage. So it's quite a wider area that needs more awareness about forced marriage and arranged marriage. And I think we need some more light on it, because a lot of people with disabilities or learning disabilities get forced into it, either to be used to have more children, grandchildren, or to be used as passports for people to come into the country.
So how were you forced into this situation? And this is a situation you managed to escape from. How did that happen?
Well, luckily my parents, they were actually quite caring, and they brought me back home. Unfortunately, that's not the same case for everybody. They don't get to be brought back home to their parents. I actually had a bad situation before I was into the forced marriage. I had a stalker, and I was labelled as, a problem that needed to be fixed. And in the mentality of the Asian community is that if you're a problem to the family, let's just get you married off as a quick fix. But a lot of mentalities are changing, but sadly for many, it's just get them married off. Let them be someone else's problem, which is not the answer.
It isn't the answer. Teacher, I mean, what are we expecting these figures to show when they come out at 9:30 this morning? I mean, there should have been, since this was made illegal, there should have been a significant drop in forced marriages, surely.
Well, it's all about availability for people to be able to access resources, to be able to talk to the forced marriage unit. But I'm expecting the statistics to go down because of the pandemic. In other words, less weddings, less travel. But yes, this is a problem that's been going on for many, many years. It's a matter of brave people like Sonny being able to go out in the outreach programs and talk to people and say, this is wrong. Something needs to be done about this.
Who's at risk of this happening, and what kind of things can you do to protect yourself, your family, from ending up in the same situation as we've just heard?
Well, Sonny's being very fair, because she's saying it's not just women, it's men as well. For every marriage, heterosexual marriage, you're going to have a man marrying a woman. And if one's being forced into marriage, maybe the other one doesn't want to be marrying somebody who's being forced into marriage. In other words, they're being married in a forceful way as well. They're not consenting really at all to that situation. And she's touched on something else, which is this, that somebody may lack mental capacity to be married. In other words, they can't consent. They're being forced into marriage. To say, why is this still going on? Well, to ask that question it's like asking, why is theft still happening? Why do we still have
But is it a cultural thing? I mean, is there a culture that needs to be overcome here, which is why it's a slow process?
I think you put your finger on it, absolutely. There's a familial culture, it's endemic, it's deep-rooted. What examples can I give you? Romeo and Juliet. When Juliet's first seen in Romeo and Juliet, she's being forced into marriage by her mother to somebody else. If you look at Pride and Prejudice, you've got marriage being forced all over the place.
Yeah.
It's something that's happened in the society in England back in the day, and other societies, I'm afraid it's still there.
Yeah.
So if someone's in that situation, what do they do now?
Contact the forced marriage unit. They're all over it. The websites are there. If you just Google it, you'll find help there. Talk to a social worker. Talk to your teacher if you're that age.
The problem is that for a lot of people, a lot of this is familial pressure. So what you may not want to do, as unhappy as you are with the situation, is you may not want to then criminalise your parents.
Absolutely. Well, there's civil and there's crime, isn't there? That's the two types of law you have. Civil, you can go to court and get protected without actually getting your parents arrested or into a criminal situation. But yes, the crime is of getting somebody forced into marriage, 7 years imprisonment. If it's linked up to anti-slavery, that's 10 years imprisonment. Now, most young people don't really want to send their parents to prison. They just want to lead a free life. And brave people like Sonny, coming forward, working in outreach programs, that's the way to get the word out that this is wrong and you can get help.
I was going to say, Sonny, what impact does it have when you go and talk to people about this and talk to young people, men and women, boys and girls? What sort of response do you get?
Well, for a lot of people, they didn't know the difference between a forced marriage and arranged marriage. You know, obviously an arranged marriage is something you have with consent, and with a forced marriage, there is no consent. So, like, if you don't have consent to the actual marriage, you're not having consent to what follows. Like, you know, like what follows is having children. So if you're not consenting to the marriage, you're not consenting to a sexual relationship. So everything that follows is rape. So if you have children born from that marriage, they're going to be brought up in a toxic relationship. They're not going to see love. So they're going to grow up thinking this is all normal. So that's not a healthy life for a child to have.
No, it isn't. Look, Sonny Angel, it's really good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. And as Tita Gupta's been saying, extremely brave what you do, even after all these years. Thank you. And Tita, thanks very much indeed for clarifying where we are. Thanks.
And those figures will come out later, and I'm sure they'll bring them to you here on GB News. Now, after the break here on Breakfast, we're going to find out what you can do, or what you can try to do, about managing your own energy bills, as it looks like they are going to soar this winter.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Energy bills could reach nearly £4,000 this winter as Russia cuts gas supplies.
Morning to you. It's 7 o'clock on Thursday, the 28th of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Rosie.
Well, here's what's leading the news this morning. Energy prices are estimated to reach £3,850 a year this winter as Putin cuts gas supplies to Europe. Well, that squeeze will mean the average customer could be paying up to £500 a month for energy next January.
The 22nd Commonwealth Games kicks off in Birmingham today with an opening ceremony at the Alexander Stadium. More than 5,000 athletes representing 72 nations and territories will take part in 11 packed days of events.
And in a first of the English legal system, television cameras are going to be broadcast from the Old Bailey. From now on, broadcasters will be allowed to apply to film sentencing in Crown Courts in England and Wales. The system is going to be highly restricted.
You can join in any of our discussions this morning. You can email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'd love to hear from you about anything we're talking about or anything else, just a bit chatty and friendly if you like. Or you can tweet us @GBNews. I'm fascinated by the fact that loads of you have got in touch on the televising the sentencing in courts, which is now going to be available. And of those of you that have got in touch so far, Sean thought it was a good idea. Everyone else says no. Lynn raises a very good point. In these days of cancel culture and the intolerance of the views of others, or don't we know about that, surely televising sentencing at senior courts will result in greater danger to the safety of judges and barristers. The relative anonymity which they enjoy now will be gone.
Yeah, that hadn't come up before. I mean, David raises another point saying, I see the televising of sentencing as the thin end of the wedge. Human nature dictates that judges will end up playing up to the gallery. In a year or two, broadcasting companies will put so much pressure on the judicial system that the entire court process will be televised.
Yeah, and if that happens, Paul says, can you imagine giving evidence in a witness box and it being seen by millions? Or being on the jury and your face being seen? Being the foreman and standing up to say guilty? If they allow any of that, no one will want to do it, and justice will not happen. I mean, that's not going to be the case now, Paul. It's just going to be the sentencing. But as you say, the potential for that to happen, and certainly broadcasters want that to happen when they're pushing for the whole lot to be televised. So very interesting points. I mean, if you're in favour of it, get in touch, balance out the discussion that way, gbviews@gbnews.uk. But I'm fascinated I thought perhaps more of you would be in favour of it. So that, I think, is really interesting so far.
Let's look to our top story, and it's energy bills. They could reach £3,850 a year this winter as Russia further curtails energy supplies to Europe.
Well, the new estimates warn that the prices could then, that means in equivalent by January, of £500 a month. Now, the soaring price could mean millions choosing, once again, between heating and eating this winter.
Well, the National Grid's also warning today of the risk to Britain's power supply this winter, with the company drawing up measures to urge people to use less electricity to avoid blackouts.
Well, let's talk to Peter Smith, who's Director of Policy at National Energy Action. Good to see you this morning. Look, this is grim on all accounts. The prices are absolutely going to go through the roof to the point that so many people just won't be able to afford it. On top of that, the potential of rolling blackouts as well.
Yeah, a nightmare scenario looming. We already know that millions of households aren't able to afford their energy for their own comfort and well-being within their homes. And whilst we were expecting a £1,000 plus increase to the energy price cap in October, these latest estimates blow that out of the water. And it looks like beyond even bigger increases than planned in October, we'll be going into January with further increases. That's only if Ofgem, the GB regulator, look to change the existing price cap to replace the 6-month current cap with a 3-month cap. And all along, we've been warning that would have desperate impacts in the height of winter. So a very, very concerning outlook.
Look, what advice do you have to someone like Bernard, who's messaging this morning, who says, my electric bill will be more than my rent?
Well, it's an absolute desperate situation. I think there is support available. Local authorities provide the Household Support Fund, where you can access some support. There is an existing package of support that's been agreed by the UK government already. If you're on benefits, you'll already hopefully started to receive the first instalment of the £650 cost of living payments, and there will be £400 coming off electricity bills in October. But all of that, sadly, is being swamped by where we are in terms of these runaway energy wholesale prices. The package of support that was put together by the UK government in May is now, a shadow of where we think the energy prices will get to. So hugely, hugely worrying. The final thing I'd say about where people can get support is if you are getting into debt and you're already worried that you're getting into debt with your energy supplier, do contact them, often, you know, the natural instinct of people is to hide the bill, and you know, I can understand that, but often that results in people going into contested arrears and significant energy debt, and that can result in some additional charges being added to your bill. So we would urge people to contact their energy supplier, and they've got to work with you to look to repay that debt in a way that's meaningful to you.
Yeah, no, that is very good advice. People do need to heed that, really, and get in touch so that they can be offered help in that way. What about pressure on Ofgem? I mean, this is all about the price cap being raised. Now, look, Ofgem doesn't have to raise the price cap. I know they're going to be under pressure to do so from energy suppliers, but if people are simply not going to be able to afford it, they could keep it. I mean, it's already very high, but they could keep it static, couldn't they?
Well, no, they are duty bound to by the legislation to pass through particular elements like the wholesale price increases, and broadly they've got to reflect suppliers' costs. But where they do have discretion at the moment is this move towards a 3-month cap period as opposed to 6 months. We've said that, you know, in an ideal world, you probably would have a more reflective cap and the frequency of it would change more often. But the impact of that going into this winter couldn't be more acute. And rather than paying a higher bill in the depth of the heating season, which is where their proposal would land us, they could be starting that reform in April, when hopefully that milder weather will be kicking in. So they do have full discretion around that policy choice, and we're urging them not to do things prematurely, because it will hit people in a very, very significant way this winter.
You've talked a little bit about timelines there, but people are looking towards the next energy price cap in October and then again. But for how long do you think we're just going to see escalating costs from price cap to price cap?
Well, it's a very difficult picture to read. I think energy analysts themselves have had to change their estimates several times in the relatively recent past. So, you know, all predictions are off in some ways, but certainly for the foreseeable future, in terms of the short to medium term, looking out to sort of springtime next year, all the indications are an increase, and we're certainly preparing for what's going to be a very brutal winter, sadly.
Peter Smith, good to talk to you. Thank you. What gets confusing about all of this is sometimes when we talk about £3,850, as though if you exceed that, you won't have to pay it. The price cap is, and I only found this out the other day, I've got to be honest, the price cap is the price per unit that it caps, and so on average it would be £3,850. Of course, if you use more electricity, you're going to pay more. So,
well, some people are going to really kind of extreme strategies to try to use less. I mean, we heard earlier from a food bank in Milton Keynes, and they said the feedback they kept getting, of course, these are people who don't want to be there, who can't afford the basics, was that actually we can't afford to have food that takes a long time to cook. I mean, Chris has got in touch. Good morning. He says, I pay £14 per month for a gym membership. I go in the morning to swim, sauna and have a shower. I go in the evening for a class, use the gym and have a shower, using the hair dryers there and also the coffee shop. I mean, that £14 per month for a gym membership, while you can afford that, that might be the strategy people use to say, well, I'll shower there instead rather than at home.
Yeah, it's just shocking. It is shocking what is happening to all of this. So how are you coping with it all? You know, we love to hear your views, and let's talk to someone who's got plenty of views for us this morning. It's Peter Scott, one of our viewers and listeners, who's in Cornwall. Morning to you, Peter. I mean, this is just so utterly depressing when you think of how many people are just going to be pushed right up against the wall if these prices continue to increase.
The unfortunate thing, Stephen, is we're in a position now where our government has turned their back on us. Ofgem are looking after the profits of large corporations. There's people who they talk about this help from the government where there isn't any, not for people who are working. If you're working and you don't qualify, you're on your own. And unfortunately, in Cornwall and other rural areas where salaries are very low compared to the rest of the country, it's going to shut people down. It will stop people driving on the fuel side of things. And as you said, it won't even be heat or eat; it will be neither. So and the government could sort it. They could quite easily cut the VAT. They have the power to do that, and unfortunately, they're using it as an election tool, and not what they should be doing is governing us as a people and looking after the people. It's just a politics game.
Peter, I know that you and your wife run what we've been described here as a luxury lodge park, which sounds brilliant. But just give us sort of the intricacies of the day-to-day of running your business and how that's become more complicated, I guess, over the last few months.
Just to clarify, it isn't our business. We do run it for a company. But as they're finding, as utilities go up, you can't keep raising people's holiday costs because nobody will turn up. Fuel has now gone through the roof, so that's going to have an impact. And most of the people I talk to on Park are concerned. We're not, we are, as you say, luxury lodges. And even the people who come to us are concerned about how prices are going. And fuel, if we've got owners who own these lodges, some of them can't afford to get to us.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very real problem, isn't it, at the moment? Because that's just, best part of £2 a litre for diesel at the moment. Look, what more needs to be done? You talk about getting rid of VAT on fuel. Fair point. I mean, it's controversial in its own right in terms of the leadership contenders at the moment. But even that it's not going to be enough, is it? Do we need to look at things like, I know the politicians don't want to do it, but looking at things like the green levy?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, depending on what scientists you talk to, and all the government scientists who they seem to have either paid for or are looking after, they all seem to want to say that we have to do this and the green levy is the only way forward. Well, not being funny, if you've got pensioners who are freezing in their homes, the green levy doesn't mean very much at all, definitely to me and a lot of people.
Oh, we've lost Peter's line. That's gone down. But we got the gist of what he was saying. Good to talk to him this morning. Good to hear your thoughts this morning. Keep them coming through. gbviews@gbnews.uk. It is that. I mean, do you know what? The green agenda, it's very difficult with the green agenda because pursuing the green agenda and renewable energies would dig us out of a lot of the problem that we're in now. That's the reality of it. But it's how do you pay for it? And paying through it with a green levy on a lot of, which is like 25% of fuel costs and things a lot of the time, or up to 25%. I think, can we do that now, at the time when no one's got any money and the prices are just going up and up and up? It's hugely difficult, but surely the politicians have got to do something. I mean, more drastic, really do something drastic to sort this out before people are literally freezing and starving in their homes come December.
There's quite a lot of anger, actually, in some of the messages that we've had this morning. And please do get in touch as well, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Jamie says the cost of living crisis is a way for the government to kill off the poor and elderly unless they are rich.
Yeah, surely not, Jamie.
But it gives you the sentiment, how angry people are feeling. Leo says, my daughter's a carer on a low wage and paying rent. I advised her to send her bank details to Rishi Sunak, requesting he pay our standing order from his personal millions to help out each month.
Vicky says, if Mr Sunak's concerned that tax cuts would be inflationary, he could target them by scrapping VAT on fuel through prepayment meters. With few exceptions, it is those who are least able to afford the increases that have them. That's a fair point. And when it comes to, and then obviously a lot of Tory voters, and if you're an older Tory voter, maybe you've got a bit more money in the bank, maybe not, but if you do, of course, everyone wants to see tax cuts, including the better off. Of course they do. But at least if you target tax cuts at the lower end of the economic spectrum, then that is less likely to be inflationary, isn't it? So maybe it's a case of raising the point at which you start to pay basic tax. I don't know. I mean, I'm no politician and I'm no economist, but clearly something needs to be done. Get in touch with your thoughts. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Right now, 16 minutes past 7. Let's bring you up to date with the other stories today. And train services are expected to be disrupted again today, particularly this morning after yesterday's rail strike. Now, the RMT, the Drivers' Union ASLEF, and the Transport Salaried Staffs Association have announced a further strike on Saturday. ASLEF and 9 other rail companies have also announced planned industrial action on the 13th of August.
The 2 Conservative leadership candidates going head-to-head in Leeds tonight in the first round of 12 regional Tory hustings. Tax and the cost of living expected to be the big battlegrounds as Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss tour the country, hoping to secure party members' votes.
England are going to face Germany at Wembley in the Euro 2022 final this Sunday. 8-time European champions Germany beat France 2-1 in yesterday's match.
Mystic McGee was right then.
He was.
On that one, he was.
He was, but he also said his prediction is that England are going to win.
Yeah.
Sunday, it kicks off at 5 o'clock.
He should get a column in the Star or something when it comes to predicting. Who needs these sort of octopuses and pigs who predict all these things? Just get Mystic McGee on. There you go.
He's certainly on a good track record. One wrong
is.
prediction, and I think it's all over.
Now, athletes from across the Commonwealth gathering in Birmingham this morning for the official ceremony kicking off the 22nd Commonwealth Games.
More than 5,000 athletes representing 72 nations and territories are going to compete in 19 sports and 280 medal events over a packed 11 days.
Our South West of England reporter Jeff Moody has been to the University of Bath, where some of Britain's top young athletes have been training in the hope of bringing back the gold.
It's the calm before the storm. Training's done, the athletes safely dispatched to Birmingham. Now the team at the University of Bath can only wait and hope.
I'm hopeful that they'll do very, very well. Following on from the Olympics last year, where we had great success, I'm optimistic that the Bath-based athletes will perform very well.
And there's a lot of them. 24 athletes who currently train and study at the university have been selected to represent their country. They're competing across 8 different sports, from netball to swimming.
It's a huge boost to everybody, staff, students, the community that come onto campus. It's an inspirational place to be when we have those very high-level athletes training here.
Athletes like Holly Munro, putting aside her textbooks on applied forensic psychology to play hockey. Or Abby Galpin, an economics student who's competing in athletics. And Tom Dean, by day a mechanical engineering student, now swimming for Team England. Team Bath is hoping for gold in the swimming, and they're likely to get it too. 13 Bath athletes are taking part, making swimming their best shot at the top.
So as well as our facilities being used by performance-based athletes, our facilities are also open to the community and to staff and students. So my children come for swimming lessons here, and they will be having their lessons alongside swimmers like Tom Dean, which is very inspirational for them.
Team Bath aimed high at the last 2 Commonwealth Games, 44 medals in total. The hope now is Birmingham 2022 will prove the sky really is the limit. Jeff Moody, GB News.
Bath looks very nice in that, doesn't it? What's Birmingham looking like today ahead of the opening ceremony? Will Hollis is there for us. Morning, Will.
Good morning. Yeah, I'll tell you what it looks like. It's looking incredibly clean because there's street sweepers going up and down here every few minutes. It's terrible for microphones, but it's incredible for keeping this city clean. Of course, it is the start of the Commonwealth Games 2022. Today, it's the opening ceremony. Where we are right now is in Victoria Square. It's sort of the nucleus of this whole operation. And one of the people behind this whole operation is Ian Reid, the CEO of the Commonwealth Games for Birmingham 2022. Ian, how does it feel to actually see this happening today and actually launching?
Yeah, it's been about 4.5 years in the making, so this is a huge day for us today, where of course we're having our opening ceremony this evening, kicking off at 8 o'clock, but of course a big build-up here in the city as well. There's a huge enthusiasm, a fabulous atmosphere. The city looks fantastic and we can't wait to get started.
And what kind of things are we going to expect in here in Victoria Square over the course of the day before we get to Alexandra Stadium, where we're going to be seeing that main ceremony?
Yeah, so this is one of our big festival hubs, so a huge amount of cultural performances, performers here on all day. We've got some live sport on the big screen behind us, trying to get the city excited, get them built up for the big ceremony tonight, and yeah, a huge amount going on here.
And it has been an incredible build-up. This has been years in the making, hundreds of millions of pounds of investment, whether it's in the areas like Smithfield or in the different arenas. How much effort has been put into this Commonwealth Games?
Yeah, a huge amount of effort. We've got about 45,000 people working on this event, and we've had a build-up of, as I said earlier, about 4.5 years or so. And you know, we're really trying to drive some real legacy output from the Commonwealth Games. So a big focus on making this the most sustainable games ever, making sure that the jobs and the skills that we can develop to get people working on these games help people into employment long into the future. So that's a big driver for us. And then hoping that this really puts the city on the world map. We've got 1.25 million tickets sold already, so lots of people coming here and then billions watching on TV all around the world.
A big celebration of this Commonwealth Games is the fact that Birmingham is such an incredibly diverse city, and it's the second city. Lots of people from different backgrounds here, but make Birmingham what it is. And that legacy that you're talking about, that when this 10, 11 days from now, when this Commonwealth Games ends, it carries on in the future and keeps Birmingham pumping, even though this Games will be a thing of the past.
Yeah, and hugely important to us, and you know, that inclusivity word, whilst not just in the sport, we've got the largest para programme ever, we've got more medals for women than men for the first time ever, but also trying to reach out to all the communities, make sure that in all the opportunities that the Games brings, be it working on the ceremonies, be it part of the Queen's Baton Relay or the festivals or the general workforce, we've got people from all across the West Midlands involved in these Games. And even the festival site that we can see behind us, there are neighbourhood festival sites as well that will reach out into a good number of wards right across the city, bringing the Games right across the West Midlands.
And it's 5,000 athletes, it's about 72 different countries, but the amount of sports that are taking place that people can get involved with, if there was one sport that you were going to watch, what would it be?
I always get asked this question. I think we've introduced women's T20 cricket to the programme for the first time down at the iconic Edgbaston Stadium, which I think will be amazing. Some great sports for young people as well. We've got 3x3 basketball, beach volleyball just down the road from here, but there's something for everyone on the programme. So I would encourage anyone, please have a look and please do join us here in Birmingham.
I'm really keen for the athletics. I think that everybody in England and Britain from the different teams that they'll be supporting will be watching those ones at the Alexander Stadium, really close. But I suppose all eyes are going to be looking on what happens now in just a few hours at this opening ceremony at that stadium I was talking about. Rosie and Stephen.
Yeah. Will, thank you very much. He didn't answer your question, Will. But then again, it's probably more than his job's worth to answer that question, because he probably likes them all. There you go. Thanks very much indeed.
We've got more from the world of sport to come.
Oh, we have.
Aidan McGee will be here. Or what did you describe him as?
Mystic McGee.
Mystic McGee.
Mystic McGee is going to have all the latest forecasts for you coming up. Get your betting slips ready.
Not just the Commonwealth Games, but of course, the Lionesses' final this weekend. That's to come after the weather.
Hello there, and welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. It is going to be a largely dry day ahead this Thursday. There'll be some sunny spells and feeling quite warm as well. So let's look at the reason for this. Is high pressure is still dominating our weather pattern, meaning it is generally dry out there for the next 24 hours or so. And that's the case this morning. There'll be lots of dry weather across the UK under the influence of this high pressure, with the exception, though, of northern England, southern parts of Scotland. Cloudy start here with some patchy rain, but this should soon start to fizzle out. And then for many, a bright day to come, plenty of sunny spells developing. Always thick as cloud across northern parts of England, southern Scotland. A few showers across central and northern parts of Scotland too. But lots of dry weather to come, and in those bright or sunny spells, temperatures lifting high teens, low 20s, and 24 or 25 as a high towards the London area. So feeling quite warm. Into the evening time, sunshine to end the day for many. Thicker cloud, though, developing across the central spine of the UK means during the early hours it could just become thick enough for one or two light outbreaks of rain. But elsewhere, generally clear skies holding on and keeping it dry. But despite those clear skies, it will be a mild night. Temperatures 11 to 15 in the towns and cities, perhaps a little bit lower in the countryside. So a sunny but mild start to Friday morning, with the exception of the Pennines and Northern Hills here. We could just see one or two splashes of light rain when we do have thicker cloud. But otherwise, dry day to come on Friday. One or two light showers developing across the southeast of England with the heat of the day. One or two later on across northern parts of England, southern Scotland. And a warm feeling day. Temperatures low 20s for many, locally high 20s, 26 or 27 towards the southeast. And into the weekend, we see an increasing risk of some rain, particularly across the north and the west of the UK. Temperatures around average, but staying above across southern areas. And here we could see highs approaching 28 or 29 by Sunday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Coming up to 7:30. Welcome back to Breakfast on GB News. Still to come here on the programme at 7:45. We're going to ask Rishi Sunak's supporter, Victoria Atkins, on what the former Chancellor would do about our top story today, the soaring cost of our energy bills.
After 9, we'll talk to the Culture Secretary, Nadine Dorries, about the Commonwealth Games. Well, maybe we'll talk to her about the Commonwealth Games. Really, we want to talk to her about Liz Truss, who she supports, why she thinks she's the right person to run the country.
And you can join in any of our discussions this morning. It might be on energy prices, cameras in courts for sentencing as well, GB Views at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us as well at GB News.
OK, let's have a look at the sport. Aidan McGee is here. Good morning.
Morning to you. How are you?
Oh, yeah, all right. So Sunday, we now know it's going to be England versus Germany.
Yeah, I know. I mean, look, it was a decent game last night. It wasn't quite the occasion that England was the previous night. Now, England looked fantastic on Tuesday evening, as we know. Oh, sorry, Wednesday evening. Was it Wednesday? No, it was Tuesday, wasn't it? Last night was Wednesday. So they looked outstanding on Tuesday. It was a completely different game in Milton Keynes last night. The crowd was... It was a decent crowd. It was at Stadium MK. There were a few thousand seats just short of a full attendance. Now, Germany were excellent. I knew after about the 20th minute that I thought they would win, having, bear in mind that they weren't favourites going into this game. But the atmosphere is going to be so much different on Sunday. It's not going to be a kind of subdued crowd that we saw last night. Towards the end of the match yesterday, it didn't even seem like it was a semi-final. I mean, even allowing for the crowd in there. But Sunday, 90,000 people, that's probably going to be the biggest attendance we've known in Europe for a women's football match. So the vast majority will be England fans as well. I don't think Germany have been braced for anything like that, even allowing for their stupendous level of pedigree in this tournament. Prior to the last tournament, they won 8 of the previous 9. They have dominated this event. They've never lost in a final. I don't want to get into cliches, but efficiency last night, they were efficient. That was a good France team. They've conceded one. They finally conceded a goal last night as well, Germany. England have only conceded 1 as well. I just think the variables will be slightly different on Sunday. Going into a massive arena like that, 90,000 people, the whole weight of the nation behind the Lionesses, I just think it might be a bit too much for Germany. I think England will win.
But what about the psychological pressure on England right now? There's this sort of heavy expectation.
Yeah, it's enormous. You get that in sport all the time. But if given a choice of playing a final, do you want to play it in front of 85,000 of your own fans and 5,000 of the opponents? I would take that situation all day long. Also, it's not like England are limping through the tournament and they're relying on getting better as the tournament gets better. They've kind of got better all the way through. I mean, yes, we can criticise the early matches where they stuck 8 goals past Norway, 5 past Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland only went professional back in January. However, you can only beat what's in front of you, and they're getting stronger as time goes on. You know, and yes, Sweden, I said for days before it happened, I said that's the acid test. I no longer think that. I think Germany will be a bigger test than that because it's in a final and because of the record in a final. But pressure's something you have to deal with, Rosie, in sport, and the Lionesses are showing that they're well capable of dealing with it up to now.
Look, we just have a look, because I've just seen this on the list, which I found, which is Emma Raducanu.
Yeah.
Right, so she's got a Russian coach.
I know.
Like, really, we sort of shouldn't care, apart from the fact that Russians are all banned from Wimbledon.
I checked this out, actually. The ban only applies to players and media. Dmitry Tursunov doesn't apply, or doesn't count as either of those because he's a coach.
Yeah, but isn't that... It still doesn't... If you're going to ban one, it still doesn't feel right, does it?
Well, I guess... No, I did think that. That's why I checked it out, because I thought it might be problematic. But I can't believe she would appoint a coach who can't be with her at tournaments. I mean, he's a former world number 20. Bit of a character, actually. He used to write a comedy blog when he was playing called The Tursunov Tales. He also, when he's playing Roger Federer, he hid Roger Federer's racket. Roger Federer was, like, racing around the dressing room saying, I haven't got a racket to play. So he's a bit of a character, you know.
Yeah.
And so...
I mean, I'm not saying that there should be a problem with that, but if you're going to ban Russians from playing...
Well, there's a risk.
But you're not banning them
I'm not
from...
saying there should be a problem, but here's what I think is the problem.
Well, yeah, but I just sort of think, why ban the Russians from playing if you're going to allow...
Well, I don't think the Russians should... In an individual sport, I don't think the Russians should be banned. I think in team sport, yes, you can do that, because when I think of someone like Nikolai Davydenko back in the day, or Daniel Medvedev recently, I don't think of Russia. I just think of Daniel Medvedev. When I think of Roger Federer, I don't think Switzerland, I don't think Spain. When I think of Rafa Nadal, I just think of them as individuals. They're not competing under a flag. Different if it's the Olympics, because you're competing under a flag and there's a medals table, and I know there are individual sports in that as well, but football's different, rugby's different, you're competing as a nation. I don't think... Anyone who thinks that Vladimir Putin wakes up in the morning thinking, oh, no, Daniel Medvedev's not competing in Wimbledon, that's going to be a blow to our war effort. I mean, they're just dreaming. It's for the birds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I very quickly, Commonwealth Games, we've just been live in Birmingham. There's real excitement there as the city gets ready for the opening ceremony. 11 days of action to come. What are the kind of highlights we should be keeping an eye out for?
Well, look, it's been dealt a huge blow for Team England yesterday. Dina Asher-Smith withdrawing with a hamstring strain. Now, Rosie, I remember Seb Coe talking about this just over 2 years ago. He said it's going to be exciting 6 weeks of action, because you've got the World Championships backed up immediately by the Commonwealth Games and the European Championships. It's ludicrous, the scheduling. You've got them literally backing onto each other. And surprise, surprise, Dina Asher-Smith, one of our great medal hopes, she pulls a hamstring last week in Oregon. She's expected to go to Birmingham and compete 3 or 4 days later in top-level elite sport. When these athletes are finely tuned competitors, there was always going to be a risk of injury. And lo and behold, this is what's happened. It was a senseless decision. I know COVID was obviously a factor. However, they've had 2.5 years now to get to grips with this. It should have been moved, and I can't believe it hasn't. And what it's resulted in is that one of our top competitors is not going to be there. However, it will be an excellent tournament. Birmingham is ready for it. I went to the topping out ceremony just before COVID 2.5 years ago. Just before we were in lockdown within a week. But the schedule, it's not the Commonwealth Games' fault. That's actually stayed in place. But rescheduling the World Championships for last week was a befuddling decision.
OK. Be befuddled no more, Aidan. We see you later on today.
Don't know, actually. Don't know. I'll see. I'll try and sell my wares. But we'll see.
Yeah. Lovely stuff, Aidan. Thanks very much.
Cheers, guys.
And now stay with us. After the break, we're going to be going through the papers. Liz Kershaw and James Bloodworth join us again. See you in a second.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
It is 7:38. Good morning to you. This is Breakfast on GB News, on your TV, your radio and online. Let's go through the papers this morning. Joining us again, broadcaster Liz Kershaw and author James Bloodworth. Morning to you. Let's kick off with... I know what you're trying to do, Liz Kershaw. Your chair's a bit high.
Don't mind if you do, but I look like a giant. Shall I go down a bit?
Go down a bit, yeah, because you're a bit... There you go. That's more like it.
Right. I know my place.
You do. Let's have a look at the Tory leadership, Liz, in the Express.
Yeah. Well, it is quite topical, isn't it? Rishi Sunak was on the TV debate, the one that didn't end.
Yeah.
With a bang, poor girl. And I watched it full hour. I kept thinking, oh, it's time travel. Anyway, he interrupted Liz Truss about 20 times, and especially when she was talking about tax and spend. And he accused her of not only being economically naive at best, or ignorant and irresponsible, but morally bankrupt for thinking of deferring the payment of our debts by 3 years. Not forever, 3 years. And then all of a sudden, he's now saying he's going to save us all from the burden of fuel prices, energy prices by, hello... Haven't we been suggesting this on this programme for weeks, months, by taking the VAT off domestic fuel bills? It's only 5%, and cutting fuel duty and VAT on petrol. And he's now saying, I will use our Brexit freedoms to cut VAT on energy bills to help millions of families. If I win, I pledge to make the most of our Brexit freedoms. Right, OK, Brexit happened on the 31st of December 2019. So we've had a good couple of years, and while he's been Chancellor, and especially since the beginning of this year, when this fuel crisis started because of Putin's invasion of Ukraine, people have been begging for him to do this as Chancellor, and he's just totally ignored it. With especially car fuel, diesel or petrol, he's creamed in about, last count a month ago, about 12 billion extra for the Treasury in extra fuel duty, which is compounded by VAT on the fuel duty as well as the petrol. So it's tax on tax. And he's done nothing. And even till the debate I watched on the BBC, he was still saying, no, we can't do that. It could be inflationary. I can't do it. And he's seen the polls, and he's now saying, I'm going to use Brexit freedoms to do this. I'm sorry, it's totally cynical. I think he should do it. He can't do it at the moment because he resigned as Chancellor in order to stab Boris Johnson in the back, get rid of him. He already had his own campaign for leadership lined up with video and website domain. and all the rest of it, and he can't do it at the moment. I don't think he'll be able to do it because if Liz Truss wins, which I predict she will, he won't be in the cabinet, I don't think. So
He won't be Chancellor.
It's just hotter. Just a comment in from viewer Tom O'Brien. Since the last round of papers.
Well, I know that name. He's a regular tweeter.
Well, he makes a good point because I've looked at my gas and electric bills and thought, why has the standing charge increased so much?
Yeah.
Tom says, even if I use zero fuel, gas and electricity in my home now, my bill would still go up 30% because of the increase in standing charge. Why? How do they justify that?
That I don't know. Because the standing charge doesn't have to go up.
No, it's for the provision of the network, the pipes into your house, the wires. It's just incomprehensible.
Yeah, very
Should we look at the Times? James, you've got a story, page 2, about what's happening to social care.
Yeah, so NHS bosses are warning that, that we need to increase funding in social care, but increase pay to social carers to stave off catastrophe in the NHS. Because, I mean, I worked in social care in 2016 for a book, research for a book, as a kind of home care where you visit elderly people and disabled people in their homes. And the sector, it was probably the hardest job I've ever done, and because it's physically taxing, but it's also emotionally exhausting as well. And the pay is awful. The pay and conditions are awful. You're on a 0 hours contract. We were actually paid below the minimum wage because you have to pay for your own petrol to drive around. So I was paid at the time about £6 an hour it worked out as, to do probably the hardest job I've ever done. And this kind of the terms and conditions in that job are leading to, there's a massive deficit of workers in the industry. So there's 165,000 vacancies in social care. And the state of the social care sector has a massive impact on the NHS and beds in the NHS, because what's happening at the moment is there are elderly people in hospital, vulnerable people in hospital, and hospitals are afraid to discharge them to the community because they're in the community, there isn't the social care to look after them. And it also works another way as well, because you have people who are not getting proper social care treatment in the community. And then because it's so hard to get a GP's appointment, they're often then, their first port of call is A&E, which creates an even further backlog in hospitals in A&E. And this is another area where successive governments have promised to sort this out. And there was hope that Boris Johnson might do that. And my fear is now that the plan that Boris, to his credit, I mean, there are many issues I have with his time as Prime Minister, but to his credit, he actually tried to get to grips with the social care crisis. My worry is that now with these new Tory leaders, that falls on the back burner again, and social care is kind of kicked into the long grass, because it's so overdue a reform to this sector. And it's not just the Conservative governments that have failed to reform it. I mean, previous Labour governments have as well. And as one care worker said to me when I was working in the sector, she said that as it stands, carers, they do one of the most important jobs in the country, yet they're treated like glorified cleaners. No disrespect to cleaners, but this is such an important job, and it's not paid, not remunerated properly. And this is one of the reasons why we have such a crisis in the sector.
Yeah. There's, I don't know how you begin to address it, though.
Well, just very briefly, I mean, it's privatised. If you're old and you're ill, you've paid in all your life, but you have to pay for your own care. And my mum, before she went into hospital and then was chucked out and put in a care home where she died 2 weeks later at the beginning of COVID, but we were paying £18 an hour for somebody to go into my mum's house as a carer, personal service, give her a medication, to pay to be given your own medicine, Anyway, we were paid £18 an hour, and I asked the lady who came in, what do you actually get? Because you have to do it through an agency.
Yeah.
She said, I get I get £8. So the agency was creaming off a tenner.
Yeah.
And the actual lady was getting £8. And we said, can we employ you? No, you can't. I've had to sign a contract. It's just such a mess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not right.
I really admire people who do it and work in care homes.
Now, what do you make, Liz, of the Times? What are they saying about TV cameras in court?
Well...
Are they applauding it or not?
Yeah, I think it's half-baked. My experience of being in court, not as a defendant, I hasten to add, Once as a witness and once witnessing what was happening with the woman who stole £86,000 off my mum, a carer. Yeah. That's a different side of the matter. But you can't just show the verdict out of context, is my feeling. So you'll see the judge, and you might see the summing up, and then you'll see him pass sentence. You will have had no idea how the case was set out beforehand and the circumstances and how it panned out and the evidence. And so it's meaningless.
Rosie made a good point earlier on when we were chatting in the break. I mean, presumably this will be streamed live somewhere, so you can watch the whole summing up and all the judges' comments and everything. But the vast majority of people are just going to see what is used in news bulletins, which is just a clip of the sentence.
If you sit in a court, as I did, and watched this woman who had my mum's trust and who emptied her bank account and pinched her car, basically, before she got scared and dumped it on the drive. If you sat there for 2 days like I did and watched all the evidence, and then she's convicted, she's found guilty, and then the judge says, well, you know, because you did this, I can only give you this as a maximum sentence. Because you pleaded guilty, I'm restricted to what I can give you. So I'll give you an 18-month sentence, suspended for 2 years. Now, if you saw that, would you have any idea what that woman had done to my mother, or what we'd just heard evidence? I don't.
What about this from Mike saying, keep the media away from our courts? They turn it into a circus, as they do with everything they get involved in. The media needs culling. It's way too big for its boots.
I think it depends how it's covered. So if it's, I assume the way it's been talked about, it would be something like the BBC Parliament coverage, where it's very, very straightforward and without frills, if you like. I think that could be useful, because I think it creates confidence in the system to have some level of transparency. I mean, I've done jury service before, and most of the trial, it wasn't exciting, but I did feel I came away with it with a better understanding of how it works. But I think it's a huge problem if it turns into this entertainment show. So it becomes like the Johnny Depp.
I sort of think is a bit inevitable.
Trial. I mean, it doesn't have to be, because I don't think BBC Parliament has gone down that route. But I think then it would, not many people watch that channel. It's kind of quite boring. But if you're interested in it, it can be quite informative.
It's not Judge Rinder or Wimpole of the Rumpole of the Bailey. It's really can be quite tedious. Also, it's voyeuristic. Look, you know, you've got the people who loved the victim, for instance, and you know, do we zoom in on their facial expressions? And no, I don't know.
It's interesting. There's been so much campaigning for it to happen for 10 years by broadcasters, and now the general sentiments that we're getting today is, I don't know if it's necessarily a good idea.
Mind you, I was riveted to the O.J. Simpson trial. And the Oscar Pistorius trial.
Well, yeah. But that is a sort of voyeurism.
Yeah, I know. And I don't
there is a danger it becomes like that, because politics shows are becoming a bit more like in the States, whereas infotainment, if you like.
Yeah. Interesting. Let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk. You two are out of time.
Oh.
But we will see you a little bit later on. Liz Kershaw, James Bloodworth. Thank you.
We will do right now, 10 minutes to 8 with Breakfast on GB News. Let's bring you up to date with the other stories making the headlines today. And train services are expected to be disrupted again today after yesterday's rail strike. Also, the RMT, the Drivers' Union ASLEF, and the Transport Salaried Staff Association have announced a further strike on Saturday. ASLEF and 9 other rail companies have also announced planned industrial action on the 13th of August.
The two candidates for Downing Street are going head-to-head in Leeds tonight in the first round of 12 Tory hustings. Tax and spending expected to be the big battlegrounds as Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss tour the country, hoping to secure party members' votes.
And England are going to face Germany at Wembley in the Euro 2022 final this Sunday. 8-time European champions Germany beat France last night 2-1. Now, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss are going to take part in the first husting of Conservative members this evening at an event in Leeds.
With the skyrocketing price of energy sure to be on the agenda, what is Rishi Sunak's plan for solving the cost of living crisis? Let's ask one of his allies, former Prisons Minister Victoria Atkins. Good to see you this morning. Look, have you been ready for Rishi's U-turn this week?
Look, I think Rishi has set out, as he has as Chancellor, set out a plan to try to help with the cost of living and has been very flexible, very happy to change as the facts demand it. And we saw this during the pandemic. So this is just the latest in our arsenal of measures to help with the cost of living.
Forgive me for interrupting. Forgive me for interrupting, but what has changed in the last couple of days, apart from a realisation that his poll ratings aren't very good when it comes to Conservative Party members? Only a few days ago, he was saying this would be an irresponsible move. Now he's saying he's going to do it.
Well, no, in fairness, he set out his three-point plan to tackle the economy, which is to get a grip on inflation, to grow the economy and to cut taxes. Rishi was talking about tax cuts at the last budget last year, but we've got to do this responsibly. What we've been able to do to announce this week is this curb on, or this cut on VAT on energy, which will help not just the poorest in society, which many of the measures that Rishi has already put in place help the most vulnerable. We want to help those people in the middle as well, who are doing their level best, working their socks off, who are normally managing pretty well, but at the moment, because of the costs of living, including inflation, that they are finding it tough. And so Rishi really wanted to demonstrate how he wants to help people like that when he is Prime Minister.
I mean, that three-point plan you just laid out there, it sounds like the vision of someone else who's coming in to say, I'm going to rescue this mess. The difficulty for Rishi Sunak is that he was the man in charge of the economy.
Well, the three-point plan is already taking shape. So, for example, this month, I hope viewers at home will have seen in their pay packets that the threshold on national insurance has risen to £12,500. That means that we're not paying income tax or national insurance on the first £12,500 we earn, and that's going to help the most people across the country to the tune of £330. We've also set out already the £400 energy help that every household's going to get. Again, not just targeting the most vulnerable. There are many measures that we've already put in place to help the most vulnerable, including pensioners, but also, as I say, helping the middle of society, if you like, who are finding it tough at the moment. We really want to help them. And so I see this very much as Rishi has already shown what he can do and our plans for the future going forward. These are very difficult times and they need careful and measured responses, which I think Rishi has shown.
I don't envy you your job. I don't envy Rishi the job he wants the one he's had and the one he wants. But to say, to help people who may be struggling in all of this, that the latest figures show that the average energy bill is going to be £3,850 a year by the end of the year. By January, it's going to increase again, likely, and it could be £500 a month. This isn't people who are struggling. This isn't people who need a long-term economic plan, carefully thought through, if you like, timed with the next election to sort of ease them out of this crisis. These are people who need help now, who cannot afford to eat. Half of them can't afford to cook their own food. So we were hearing from someone who runs a food bank. They can't afford to have food that's going to need heating up because they just can't pay for that. Duncan's been in touch. He's concerned he's going to lose his business because he runs an aquatic business and the weekly electricity cost is going to more than double. I mean, these people need immediate help, which Rishi Sunak is not offering.
Well, if I may, that's exactly why I've set out what has already happened this month with the national insurance threshold and the £400 on energy bills, and there is more help for pensioners and for people living with disabilities as well. But this is why curbing inflation, getting a grip on inflation, is the number one priority for Rishi because it is inflation that is driving these prices. Inflation is driving the prices up. This is what inflation is. And so that's why it's so critical that we get a grip on inflation. And by the way, this is happening across the world. We've seen the news in the States overnight about the rise in interest rates there. This is happening across the world. These are global pressures. But Rishi has already demonstrated the measures he can take to help people, and there will be more as we go through. As I said, the one thing people cannot take away from Rishi is that throughout the pandemic, he showed his willingness to both listen but analyse the situation and then act quickly. If you think how quickly the furlough scheme was set up, how quickly small business grants for businesses were set up, that saved 11.6 million jobs. It saved over 1 million businesses through the pandemic, and it is precisely that expertise that Rishi will be bringing to the cost of living crisis in the coming months.
Victoria Atkins, good to talk to you. Thank you.
Still to come here on today's programme. Well, first of all, if you've got views on that, then please do get in touch. It might be that, like Bernard, who messaged earlier, who said, look, actually my electricity bill is going to be more than my rent. Did that pitch for Rishi Sunak persuade you that he's the person to be Prime Minister? Let us know your views. You can tweet us as well at GB News.
Yeah, all the top stories heading your way in just a moment.
Hello there and welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. It is going to be a largely dry day ahead this Thursday. There'll be some sunny spells and feeling quite warm as well. So let's look at the reason for this. Is high pressure is still dominating our weather pattern, meaning it is generally dry out there for the next 24 hours or so. And that's the case this morning. There'll be lots of dry weather across the UK under the influence of this high pressure, with the exception though of northern England, southern parts of Scotland. Cloudy start here with some patchy rain, but this should soon start to fizzle out. And then for many, a bright day to come, plenty of sunny spells developing, always thick as cloud across northern parts of England, southern Scotland, a few showers across central and northern parts of Scotland too, but lots of dry weather to come, and in those bright or sunny spells, temperatures lifting high teens, low 20s, and 24 or 25 as a high towards the London area, so feeling quite warm. Into the evening time, sunshine to end the day for many. Thicker cloud, though, developing across the central spine of the UK means during the early hours it could just become thick enough for 1 or 2 light outbreaks of rain. But elsewhere, generally clear skies holding on and keeping it dry. But despite those clear skies, it will be a mild night. Temperatures 11 to 15 in the towns and cities, perhaps a little bit lower in the countryside. So sunny but mild start to Friday morning, with the exception of the Pennines and Northern Hills here. We could just see 1 or 2 splashes of light rain where we do have thicker cloud. But otherwise, dry day to come on Friday. 1 or 2 light showers developing across the southeast of England with the heat of the day. 1 or 2 later on across northern parts of England, southern Scotland. And a warm feeling day. Temperatures low 20s for many, locally high 20s, 26 or 27 towards the southeast. And into the weekend, we see an increasing risk of some rain, particularly across the north and the west of the UK. Temperatures around average, but staying above across southern areas. And here we could see highs approaching 28 or 29 by Sunday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory. twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Energy bills could reach nearly £4,000 this winter as Russia cuts gas supplies.
A very good morning. It's 8 o'clock on Thursday, the 28th of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen Dixon and Rosie Wright.
This is what's leading the news for you this morning. Energy prices estimated to reach very nearly £4,000 a year this winter as Putin cuts gas supplies to Europe. The squeeze will mean the average customer, with extra increases expected in January, could be paying by then £500 a month.
The 22nd Commonwealth Games kicks off today in Birmingham with an opening ceremony at the city's Alexander Stadium. More than 5,000 athletes representing 72 nations and territories will take part in 11 packed days of events.
And in a first for the English legal system, cameras are going to be allowed to broadcast from the Old Bailey. Broadcasters will be allowed to apply to film sentencing in Crown Courts in England and Wales. It is going to be highly restricted.
Well, you can join any of our discussions. Should cameras be in court? What are you looking forward to in the Commonwealth Games? And also, how are you managing the current cost of living? You can email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or drop us a tweet to @gbnews.
Scary how everyone is struggling at the moment. And the ideas that people are coming up with, like John says, do people need a shower every day? For generations, people didn't have showers. Sunday was a bath day. In between, you'd have strip washes as necessary. Are we going to have to go back to that? A flannel wash, as we called it up north. Yeah, maybe. Flannel wash at the sink.
Well, someone got in touch earlier saying that they were using the showers at their gym because it was only £14 a month, so that made more financial sense. But
Yeah,
Tom's got in touch.
actually, on that one, Paul says the guy paying £14 a month and using the showers at the gym better make the most of it, because as more and more people do this, it's going to be unsustainable for the owners and the prices will go up.
The point that Tom makes exactly, how long a gym's going to keep their prices low. Well, I mean, that is the reality. Maybe you shower at work instead. So people can go and swim, to use their hairdryers and cheap coffee. They have energy bills too, heating pools, electricity.
Maria says even if you try to use less electricity, it's not the cost of the unit that's increased drastically. Well, it has. But on top of that, the daily charge, the standing charge that cannot be economised on, which Liz was talking about earlier on, that standing charge really has gone up. Phil says, what about people like my wife and I? We're not on benefits, have never claimed a penny. We're both working for minimum wage, and it's a struggle now. How do we get hold of the cash that's instantly, freely available to those on benefits? No wonder people don't want to work. What's the point? Well, the whole point, if you remember Ian Duncan Smith, when he was working pension secretary and was introducing universal credit, which was controversial in itself, and that's a good few years ago now, but he was saying the point of that was to make sure that it paid to work, that you couldn't claim more in benefits than people who were working. Whether that's come to pass or not, I don't know. And of course, it's no use to you if you are on benefits. But I mean, as Phil says, if you're working, it's the working poor, isn't it? Working away as much as you can and still can't afford to heat or eat or fill the car or whatever it might be.
Well, if you've just joined us, it's the reason we're discussing this is the prediction of our energy bills is they could reach £3,850 a year this winter as Russia further curtails energy supplies to Europe.
Yeah, the new estimates warn that, As if £4,000 isn't enough, it could go up again in January to £500 a month, which would mean £6,000 a year. The soaring price could push millions into poverty.
So with prices rising across the board, what hope do people have if you are trying to save, if you're renting right now, looking at how much you're spending on your rent and thinking, I would much prefer to be spending that on a mortgage? What's happening to trying to get onto the property ladder?
Yeah, the Office for National Statistics is going to release a report on housing affordability later this morning. So to look ahead to that, we're joined by property expert Russell Quirk. Good to see you this morning, Russell. I mean, look, everything is just becoming less affordable, isn't it? People are just not going to have the resources, are they, to get on the housing ladder?
Well, you say that, but of course, people have been saying that about house prices for quite some time. And despite pandemics and the threat of no-deal Brexits and now the cost of living crisis, we're still seeing house prices go up and up and up. And no matter which index you look at now, whether it's the official Office of National Statistics house price index, which comes out every month, or the Nationwide or the Halifax, we're still seeing house price appreciation across the country as an average, and obviously it varies town to town, region to region, but an average of about 10%. So we do talk a lot about affordability. And of course, the report that you allude to that comes out in an hour and a half or so will talk a lot about the relationship, the ratio between house prices and wages. Now, obviously, house prices have escalated far more than wages have over the last couple of years, but still there's demand. Still people are buying properties. And one of the main reasons for that, of course, is because even though we've seen interest rate hikes over the last few months, significant ones really, house prices are still fueled by what is still relatively cheap money. The cost of a mortgage in relative terms, based on history, is still cheap.
Much of that is based on people selling and buying. I mean, people who've already got or developed quite a lot of equity, rather than first-time buyers, which are going to be needed to sustain the market long term.
Yeah, absolutely. The first-time buyers prop up the housing market. Of about 1.2 million transactions on average, between 25 and 35% of those transactions every year are first-time buyers. But surprisingly to many, the data actually shows that last year there were about 400,000 first-time buyers, so not quite the most ever, but right up there in terms of one of the top 3 years for volume of first-time buyers buying a property. So, despite the fact that we'd all say, anecdotally, that the headwinds are against the first-time buyer in terms of getting their foot on the first rung of the property ladder, actually what the data shows in terms of volume is that lots and lots of people are still managing to buy for the first time. And look, there'll be a bunch of reasons around that, of course. There's the bank of mum and dad, which is not a real bank, but obviously is the money that's lent from parents and grandparents to younger generations to buy. That now is in the tens of billions of pounds. And in fact, if the bank of mum and dad were a real bank, it would actually be one of the top 10 banks in the country. But of course, it's not a real bank. We also have Help to Buy. We have assisted mortgages. And as I say, we also have the benefit of low money costs, which means that first-time buyers, despite what we're saying here in terms of difficulty, are still managing to get that foot on that first rung.
We've been hearing rumours, I know this has happened time and time again, and the housing market has been resilient throughout the pandemic, so far the war in Ukraine, of this potential crash in the market to come early next year. How much do you buy into that?
I don't at all. I mean, there's the likes of Capital Economics and a few other kind of what I would say are doomsayers who constantly talk about the market crashing. And I guess like a broken clock, Rosie, one day they will be right. But unfortunately for them and their continuing prophecies, I think that the fundamentals of the housing market, which is strong demand, we live in a culture really that is focused on being property owners, the low cost of money, the fact that first-time buyers don't pay stamp duty, and the fact that there's an acute shortage of stock, and not just the amount of new builds that are built, and that's definitely something that let's hope the future government will actually at last address in terms of getting the amount of new builds built that we need. But actually, if you ask any estate agent right now, they'll tell you that the amount of stock that they're actually able to sell is, again, almost an all-time low. So that lack of supply is also keeping house prices high. Will we see a crash? No. And I don't even think we'll see a drop in house prices. I think we'll see a deflation in the rate of growth. So the 10% that I talked about earlier on in terms of how house prices are increasing per year, I think next year we'll see that down to something between 3 and 5%. But will people sitting here watching this run the risk of their house being worth less money next year? No, absolutely not, in my opinion.
Russell, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you. Tracy's tweeted in, actually tweeted me directly. It's not the best way to do it because I don't look at these very often. At GB News is the best way, but nevertheless, I've seen this one from Tracy. Can someone please explain why electricity bills are rising astronomically when our countryside and seas are packed with wind farms and thousands of acres of farmland covered in solar panels? Because it doesn't appear to be any benefit to us consumers at all. Now, I know it's not enough. We're not supplying enough of our electricity from renewables. But actually, because I've just been looking at various deals and packages and all the rest of it, because my thing's coming to an end in September. If you want to go into a higher green energy tariff, so it's more green than not, they charge you more. Or my supplier charges more, which is crackers. And someone called Jamie Jenkins, and I don't know, someone who knows his stats apparently, but quite how true this is, I don't know, I can't verify it. It says Britain's largest energy supplier, Centrica, which is part of British Gas, I think, reports a huge increase in first half profit, operating profits to £1.3 billion from 262 million a year earlier. If that's true, I can't say I can't verify that. I don't know. But if profits are going up that much, something has to be done, doesn't it? Action from the energy companies, perhaps, needs to be done. Whether that's doable, feasible, I have no idea. But you do wonder.
We've got more on energy to come across the programme, but right now let's turn our attention to Birmingham because athletes from across the Commonwealth are gathering in the city this morning for the official opening ceremony, which kicks off the 22nd Commonwealth Games.
More than 5,000 athletes representing 72 nations and territories set to compete in 19 sports and 280 medal events over the next 11 days. That's a few numbers for you.
Well, let's go to Birmingham City now as our Midlands reporter Will Hollis is there for us. Will, it's clearly a really big day for Birmingham. What can we expect?
Yeah, it's really big for Birmingham as a hub, the second largest city in the UK hosting this Commonwealth Games, the 22nd Commonwealth Games in the year 2022. Whether they did that on purpose or not, that's one question that I can't answer today. One thing that I can answer, though, is that the numbers of people, 5,000 athletes coming here, 72 countries, and 14,000 volunteers that are actually making this happen. Now, I can say this morning, we're very lucky in Victoria Square to be joined by one of those volunteers. We're joined by Kian, who actually works in Birmingham but has taken a little bit of time off to volunteer for the Commonwealth Games. What do you do usually for your day-to-day job?
So I work in H. Samuels in the bull ring, so that's a jewellery store. So yeah, but I'm normally there weekends, so I've managed to kind of do the volunteering around that, yeah.
And the bull ring, for people that have never been to Birmingham, is this massive shopping centre. It's this massive hub, and it's big for Birmingham. But this is such a huge thing for Birmingham. Why did you want to be involved in the Commonwealth Games?
Because it's not every day that the Commonwealth Games ends up in your city. I think it's a good opportunity for people in general, just to see how diverse Birmingham is, and like we're a really, really fun city as well.
Yeah, it seems that people are really behind this as well. People that are even going to work are stopping to have a little bit of a look around. To be a volunteer at this, what's the process that you've been to and how have you ended up here today?
Oh gosh, it's been a long process, but it's been worth it. So I had to apply online, and then if I got past that stage, that's when I got taken to do some interviews, like face-to-face. So I was one of the first few people to be interviewed as well. And then after that, we had to wait to see if we actually got the position, and we had to accept it. So probably found out in February of this year, and then from then it's just been a bunch of training since then.
The job is massive, you can tell by how long you've had to train for it. What is it that you're going to be doing when you do start volunteering?
So I'll be a Games ambassador. I'll be based in Centenary Square in Birmingham, and I'll be also based in Sutton, where the triathlon is. So I'll kind of just be wayfinding, you know, where people need to get their next shuttle bus to and from their events. I'll let them know what time it is, where they need to get to, and if they just generally want to have a bit of a walkabout in Birmingham, I'll let them know.
If there's a travel expert, you come to the local people who live and work here. You've just seen one of the trams actually go past. It's a bit of an icon, and I'm sure lots of visitors that are coming from parts of the world where they don't have trams are going to love that. One of the other things that's going to be iconic is this outfit, this tracksuit that you're wearing. The colours are fantastic. How does it feel to be wearing these colours?
It feels really, really good. I mean, it looks great on me, so that's a bonus. I quite like this like yellowy mustard kind of colour. It's really, really nice. Blue's one of my favourite colours as well, so I mean, you can't go wrong there. So it feels great.
Kian, it's lovely to see how happy you are and how proud you are to be representing Birmingham. Thanks for talking to us on GB News Breakfast this morning. We're here all throughout the morning as well as throughout the day, talking to the local people that are going to make this Commonwealth Games extra special for the people visiting.
Lovely stuff, Will, thank you. It's the volunteers that make all the difference. It was the same in London 2012, wasn't it? The volunteers really make the difference and lift the spirit and the mood of the city and everyone there and all the visitors. So good on them, that's what I say.
And great colours as well. It's gone down well with the volunteers. Well, the Commonwealth Games are traditionally opened by the Queen, but tonight's opening ceremony speech will be delivered by the Prince of Wales on behalf of Her Majesty.
Well, with other royal family members expected to attend, there's lots of royal news about. Let's talk to Rafe Hedelman-Koo for all the inside information. Good to see you, as always, Rafe. It is going to be quite a royal 11 days, isn't it?
Yes, well, of course, the Commonwealth and the monarchy are intrinsically linked. The Commonwealth was a creation, of course, of George VI and the Queen. She hasn't opened every Commonwealth Game, so this isn't the first time that she won't have been present for the Commonwealth opening ceremony. But yes, the 30,000 people in the newly refurbished Alexander Stadium will get the chance to see both the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall, as well as Edward and Sophie, the Earl and Countess of Wessex, because Edward is vice-patron of the Commonwealth Games Federation. And then later on, during the 11 days, they'll be able to see on Tuesday the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, Prince William and Kate, as well as Princess Anne, who is, of course, we know, very involved in the Olympics herself.
And they'll be very keen for this to all go smoothly and the optics to play out right.
Yes, absolutely. Well, this is an important event because, as we know, the royal family in the last year have had some difficulty with Commonwealth tours. So it's very important that they strike the right note on this occasion. But, of course, the Commonwealth is expanding, so the Commonwealth is actually in rude health at the moment. But it's also a chance to celebrate Birmingham. The wonderful statue of Queen Victoria out in Birmingham city centre has been decorated for the occasion. And it's a great chance, I think, for everyone to actually celebrate Britain's second royal city, which is Birmingham.
Yeah, now the Queen may not be attending the opening ceremony, but she is at some point over the next few days, and she's going to open a pub. Now, I never thought the Queen had opened pubs.
Well, she has pulled a pint or two in her life. Prince Philip was one of the best barmen in town. He's had so much experience going to pubs in little villages. But yes, there is a former social club in West Newton in Norfolk, near Sandringham, just across from the church that the Queen always attends. And that closed down during COVID, and so the Royal Estate have decided to turn it into a pub. They're looking for a landlord at the moment. Whether it will be called the Queen's Head or the Queen's Arms, I don't know. But
Which should be, shouldn't it? That would be perfect. That would be perfect. It's quite nice to see her doing something a little bit more local and a smaller occasion. Somehow, it's just a bit more intimate. It's not going to be nice, isn't it?
Well, yes. It's basically everything is walking distance around there. And really, when she's in Norfolk, it is very much a village atmosphere around Sandringham. People get to see her at church, and she knows some of the people on a first-name basis. So I think, actually, that's a nice way for our monarch to spend this part of her life engaged in more local activities.
Yeah.
Just briefly, time for one more royal story. There's a new HBO series about Princess Diana.
Yes. So this documentary is coming out next month. Next month marks the 25th anniversary of the death of Diana, Princess of Wales. Now, when I heard about this, I felt like Brenda from Bristol when she heard about another election.
Yeah.
What, another one?
Yeah.
Do we really need this? But having said that, this premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in January. I read some of the reviews, and there's a new trailer that's out today. And actually, it looks like a very interesting analysis of the media and of the British public's strange attitude towards Diana and this obsession that they had with her. I'm sure this is not the best news for the Duchess of Cornwall, who's trying to basically free herself of the shadow of Diana. And after all the good developments of recent years, next month is going to be pretty hard, I suspect.
Yeah, but are you right, aren't you? Not another one. I mean, we've been... Look, I mean, 25... At some point, we've got to lay it to rest, haven't we? Why are we still so obsessed?
Well, I would hope... At the 10th anniversary, there was a tribute to Diana concert in Wembley Stadium, you may remember. And at that time, I had said, let's hopefully put this now to rest. Let's hope now, at this 25th anniversary, the silver jubilee of Diana's death, that this will finally be the time when we can actually say, all right, enough is enough. Let's look to the future and stop hearkening to the past and bringing up bad memories, which do no one in the country or in the royal family any good whatsoever.
Yeah. Rafe, good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Now, coming up here, we're going to be talking about a landmark stroke treatment and why thousands of people who currently want it aren't getting access to it. That's to come after the weather.
Hello there and welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. It is going to be a largely dry day ahead this Thursday. There'll be some sunny spells and feeling quite warm as well. So let's look at the reason for this. Is high pressure is still dominating our weather pattern, meaning it is generally dry out there for the next 24 hours or so. And that's the case this morning. There'll be lots of dry weather across the UK under the influence of this high pressure, with the exception though of northern England, southern parts of Scotland. Cloudy start here with some patchy rain, but this should soon start to fizzle out. And then for many, a bright day to come, plenty of sunny spells developing, always thickest cloud across northern parts of England, southern Scotland, a few showers across central and northern parts of Scotland too, but lots of dry weather to come. And in those bright or sunny spells, temperatures lifting high teens, low 20s, and 24 or 25 as a high towards the London area. So feeling quite warm. Into the evening time, sunshine to end the day for many. Thicker cloud, though, developing across the central spine of the UK means during the early hours it could just become thick enough for one or two light outbreaks of rain. But elsewhere, generally clear skies holding on and keeping it dry. But despite those clear skies, it will be a mild night. Temperatures 11 to 15 in the towns and cities, perhaps a little bit lower in the countryside. So a sunny but mild start to Friday morning, with the exception of the Pennines and Northern Hills here. We could just see one or two splashes of light rain where we do have thicker cloud. But otherwise, dry day to come on Friday. One or two light showers developing across the southeast of England with the heat of the day. One or two later on across northern parts of England, southern Scotland. And a warm feeling day. Temperatures low 20s for many, locally high 20s, 26 or 27 towards the southeast. And into the weekend, we see an increasing risk of some rain, particularly across the north and the west of the UK. Temperatures around average, but staying above across southern areas. And here we could see highs approaching 28 or 29 by Sunday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. It is 25 minutes.
In your own time, Rosie, in your own time.
I was bizarrely looking at the wrong camera. I really don't know what was going on there. It's 25 minutes past 8. Lots to come on breakfast this morning, so don't go anywhere. In about 20 minutes, we're going to be speaking to the legendary double Grammy Award-winning musician Shaggy about his appearance at the UK's biggest reggae festival this weekend.
Mr. Bombastic.
Exactly. Well, maybe we don't need him. You know, we could just have a little rendition here instead.
9:15, a new documentary series on Netflix exposes the so-called king of revenge porn, Hunter Moore. We're going to speak to the mother of one of his victims. She's a real campaigner on this.
You can join any of our discussions this morning. Particularly, you've been getting in touch about whether it's appropriate to have cameras in court for sentencing, and also how you're managing the current cost of living. gbviews@gbnews.uk is our email, or you can tweet us as well @gbnews.
Yeah, Andy in East Riding says the problem is TV is driven by viewing figures. Yes, it is. As a result, broadcasters will target attractive cases, gory murders, rapes, big armed robberies, whereas the bulk of court cases are quite boring. Sensationalism at its worst. Oh, I'm a bit tempted to agree with you.
Yeah, Dave in Bristol says, no way this should happen. Personal security issues are immense. Quite a lot of people have been talking about kind of the sort of anonymity that court can provide you with. But Dave says judges and barristers' faces will be exposed, as will be the juries. They could be at risk of revenge threats or pressures by relatives or friends of the accused. The judicial system is not Love Island. Now, I must stress, at this point, it's just going to be showing the judge doing the sentencing. But what lots of people have been saying is, well, this is step one. What might happen further down the line?
Yeah, and if it does head down that path, Terry in Portsmouth says broadcasters' wish list should be secondary to the needs of witnesses, jurors and even defendants until proven guilty. Anyone who's been a witness in court, I have, will tell you it's nerve-wracking. TV presenters are used to it, the public isn't. Again, it's a very valid point. Keep your thoughts coming through. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now, the Stroke Association says that over 47,000 people will miss accessing what they call a miracle stroke treatment within the next 7 years unless the government and NHS take immediate action.
Yeah, patients undergoing the treatment can cut hospital stays by months, being sent home the next day rather than spending months in rehab. Well, Dr. Josh Woolrich is an A&E doctor and is here. Good to see you this morning.
Good morning.
What do we know about this treatment then? This miracle treatment?
So it is a very good treatment. I wouldn't say it's a miracle, but it is very, very good for helping people with getting back to their general status after a stroke. There are different types of strokes. There are strokes that are from a bleed and there are strokes that are from a clot, and about 85% of them are from a clot, and these are the ones we're talking about in this situation. Some of those are suitable for us to either bust the clot, so we give drugs to what we call thrombolize the clot and break it down and restore the blood flow in the brain back to the area that should have been there. And this treatment is actually a procedure to go and actually grab the clot and remove it mechanically. It's a bit like an angiogram where people will have a stent put in for a heart attack. It's a similar kind of procedure. They make a small cut in the groin and they feed a device up and they grab the clot and remove it.
So it sounds grim to us, but actually from your perspective, it's a comparatively easy procedure, isn't it?
I personally couldn't perform it, but it is a very, it's a very, very good procedure. It has very good outcomes. Until the last kind of 3-4 years, we've just been doing the clot busting, and it's very good. It works very well, but if the clot is too big, it doesn't always restore blood flow in the way that it wants to. So there's recommendations now to include both of them together, both the clock busting and then the clock grabbing, essentially, is the best way of putting it.
So if those are the recommendations, is it not being put into practice? Because the question we'll have is, why is it that this report is saying thousands of people will be getting denied access to this treatment?
Yeah, it's resource ability, unfortunately. And I'm not ashamed to say that the NHS itself isn't as good as it should be. The main problem with this, a lot of it is funding, a lot of it is staffing issues, and then the other thing is A&E waiting times, and that actually has a knock-on effect on everything in the hospital. So if in the A&E I work in, and this is the case in every single A&E in the country at the moment, the waiting times in A&E, if you're admitted to hospital before going onto the ward, are very long. And so that backs up into the waiting times, sitting in the ambulance, waiting to be seen, and all of this kind of stuff impacts things like strokes, because there's a certain window where you can perform these procedures, and it's within the first kind of 6 hours.
I was going to say, with strokes, it is all, and we've seen the adverts, the information stuff about it, it's all about the timing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really important to make sure that these kind of things are done earlier. And we do have an issue where we're not quite meeting those timings. Even when we do see people within that time, we work in the UK in a kind of a hub and spoke model. So we changed to that model a couple of decades ago for trauma, and it's very good to make sure that people get good care. But what it does mean is that we need to be able to transfer patients to sites where they perform these procedures. Not every hospital will do it, and so it's neurosurgical centres that do. They have to have space. We also have to see people in enough time to be able to have that time to transfer them as well, because that takes time. So the whole thing is difficult, and we are missing people who objectively would benefit from having this procedure.
You're dealing with that queue of waiting patients day in, day out. From your perspective, what would make it shorter? Is it the worried well? Is it having more doctors? Is it having more resource?
Yeah, it's not patient fault. It really is the number of doctors and also the resources that the hospital have. The problem with something like this is that you've got sites that have the ability to perform these procedures, but not all of them are open 24/7 for starters, so only some of them are. You need more staff to be able to staff it 24/7. You need more actual machines and equipment to be able to do the procedure. It's a big problem in terms of funding of the NHS, and over the last decade we have had a massive decrease in the amount of funding, and we've had to sell off portions of the NHS to private companies. I'm sure that's something you well know about. And also the fact that we're just not able to actually keep up with this kind of stuff. And it's hard, but it is something that needs highlighting. And the Stroke Association are very right in highlighting this kind of stuff. It's just very difficult to know where that kind of blame lies. And I think a lot of it is to do with top-down government level, unfortunately.
OK. Josh, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. You don't need to look apologetic about it. It's fine.
Well, it's
fine.
hard.
I mean, it is hard. You know, it's that whole thing, though, isn't it, as to when it comes to the funding issue, because the NHS is a bottomless pit, isn't it? And just a quick one then.
Yeah,
is it time? Because it's impossible for politicians to do because they get massacred over it. But does there need to be an absolute overhaul of how the NHS operates to make it more efficient, to make it more cost-effective, to make sure we're getting this sort of treatment?
In an ideal world, I'd love to go back to what we had, but unfortunately it almost feels like that's too late. So it does seem like there needs to be a bit of an overhaul. What that looks like, that's beyond my knowledge level, unfortunately, but I am seeing that there's a problem currently, and we've all been seeing that for quite a long time now.
Josh, thank you.
Right.
There you go. Let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Gone 8:30. Don't go anywhere. After the break, we're taking a look through the papers again with Liz Kershaw and James Bloodworth.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital, absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
It's 8:36. Good morning and welcome back to breakfast on GB News. Time to go through the papers. Joining us again in the studio, broadcaster Liz Kershaw and author James Bloodworth. Thank you both very much. Liz, let's start with you and the front page of the FT this morning. Tory leadership contest. We've got weeks left to go, but there's still news lines out there.
Yeah, this is an article on the front page of the Financial Times, and it's suggesting there's a bigger spread on it inside, more analysis, that in the leadership contest, there's not enough talk about levelling up. You know, what's happened to the big policy of the Tory government, the signature issue, levelling up. They've both mentioned it, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, in the debates and in interviews that I've seen. Liz Truss brought in her years in Leeds, high school years, there were a few of them.
She was there for a couple of years.
Yeah, and said, which she's now been, you know, they're using it to dig up everything, don't they? Oh, what's she moaning about? Great school, she went to Oxford and that, yes. But I think what she was saying is what I would say about my comprehensive school, that you got a cross-section of the whole of society, and going from a private school, primary school, to a comprehensive school, I really got a social education, which I'm grateful for. Anyway, we digress. So they have both mentioned it. Rishi Sunak cited his growing up in Southampton. What brought levelling up home to me recently, and it was quite heartbreaking, was that I went to Runswick Bay in North Yorkshire. That was not heartbreaking, that was fantastic. And it's all, you know, second homes and middle-class people on the beach. And we had to take one of our party up further north to get a train home earlier than us. I won't mention the place because I don't want to shame the people, upset the people who live there. I'm not snooty. But the contrast. Yeah. And it was just so depressing. It wasn't even a miserable day. It was a lovely sunny day, but there were boarded up shops, the seafront was run down, the station was all boarded up and it's just a couple of platforms and a bus shelter. What was worse is there were like gangs of teenagers standing on street corners chatting. I thought, there's nothing for them to do. Can you imagine growing up there? Where, I mean, there's places where you come from in Cumbria that are like that. My hometown, Rochdale, there's nothing to do. There is no aspiration, because if I were 14 there now, I would be thinking, what's on the cards for me? You know, how do I don't have contacts. I can't get an internship at some fancy London media firm or advertising. You know, what is the prospect? And we went through one smaller town that used to be a mining town to get there. And that's like a strip, you know, and the shops and closed down. And I thought, fancy growing up here, something needs to be done. Now, Rishi
Is there a
Sunak...
sense, though, it's got to go on the back burner a little bit?
I think so.
Purely because of everything
The
else that's
economic
going on.
problems.
Yeah, because, I mean, following the referendum of 2016, there was this new interest in, like, left-behind communities, typically former industrial towns where manufacturing and things had left. And the levelling up agenda came on the back of that, this new interest in the working class, if you like. I think as the referendum recedes into the past, it will be easier for politicians to kind of start ignoring that issue again and the levelling up agenda to kind of fall by the wayside.
But do you think part of it is about who Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss are currently trying to appeal to?
Perhaps, yeah. I mean, the Tory grassroots are not representative of the country. It's the average age is, I think, 70, and it tends to be wealthier individuals. So, yeah, perhaps. But I do think there's less interest in those communities that levelling up would benefit as we get further away from the 2016 referendum.
Well, I'm a member of the Conservative Party and I'm 64 on Saturday. I'm quite well off, but I still care. So I don't think we can generalise on that. But I've been talking about this for years because looking around Rochdale, when I was about to do my A-levels and all the mills were closing and, you know, we've had all the associated social problems with Rochdale since, which are well publicised now. So it stems from the fact that the jobs that went have not been replaced. And this is something that it's not just about, it is about building new roads and new railway lines and spending money on revitalising town centres. But we need to create meaningful, well-paid jobs, not in warehouses, you know, James an expert on Amazon, but skilled, well-paid jobs people can hold their heads. I was walking around Whitby during this holiday and a guy approached me and he had been a steel worker in Middlesbrough, Teesside, and he was saying, will you buy one of these? And there were pamphlets with jokes in that he'd made up. I just thought...
Oh, yeah, I've encountered
I admired
that.
the guy, and I just thought, this is so sad. But why isn't this guy got a real breadwinner's job doing something meaningful?
Should we look to some more international news? Front page of the Daily Telegraph, James, is posing a very scary question.
Yeah, I mean, this is more doom and gloom, if you like. So there's the risk of an accidental nuclear confrontation with China and also Russia is an increased risk because the channels of communication that existed during the Cold War are not there anymore with those countries. So, I mean, the Cold War is often characterised as this, you know, as a standoff between East and West where we lived with this kind of fear of nuclear confrontation. But what's being said here by the security chief is that it was actually easier to understand in some ways the other side during the Cold War because there were these channels of dialogue between the nations. But now there aren't those channels between China, and the West, and between Russia and the West. And also China appears to be increasing its nuclear warheads. So I mean, I find it quite absurd reading some of these figures. So Russia has 6,000 nuclear warheads, America has 5,600 nuclear warheads, and China has 350. And you know, just a few. Each one of these could destroy an entire city. So I mean, a miscalculation on the part of one side could lead to escalation, which could lead to basically apocalypse. So I mean, this is the world is becoming scarier, and this is an example of it.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Isn't it just?
I'm sorry to bring this bad news.
It's like growing up back in the 80s again, isn't it? All that, well, you really thought it could all happen.
Two tribes.
Oh,
that record, you know, if you hear the alarm,
Yeah.
Get in your shelter. And it was written, and that book, When the Wind Blows, about the old couple clinging to each other.
And the film Threads as well. Yeah. Have you ever seen that? It kind of depicts what would happen in the UK in the event of a nuclear war. It's absolutely terrifying.
Well, in the meantime, Liz, we've got the potential of, according to the Eye, I haven't heard this from the 80s since the 80s really either, a general strike.
Yeah. Well, that's what is possibly on the cards, according to a few of the papers. Pick the Eye. When they say general strike, it will be generally public sector workers who have got strong unions, and I believe in strong unions, but it's not going to be people flipping burgers and frying chips in McDonald's on a minimum wage. It's not going to be people in warehouses on 0 hours contracts. They're the people who aren't going to be able to get to work and are going to lose out as well. So it's not going to be like the general strike of 1922 when tens of thousands of miners before the coal board was, before the coal industry was nationalised, went on strike and marched to London from the northeast. But yeah, I think there are going to be strikes. I wish we could just all pull together. But meanwhile, I just want to ask a question before I go on today. What is the Labour Party for? Because the Labour Party was created by the trades unions, the labour movement, and it's supposed to represent people who labour in order to put food on the table rather than those who own capital. And Keir Starmer yesterday sacked an MP who had been a union rep because he stood on the picket line, shoulder to shoulder with the workers. I just don't understand how those two things can be reconciled.
Well, I mean, I think there is a case for Keir Starmer sacking his Transport Secretary, not because he went on the picket line, because I think Labour should have supported the strikes, but I think for breaking shadow cabinet unity, because if there is a position the shadow cabinet has that people should not be on the picket lines, and then one person does that, then I think Keir Starmer has to show that he's the leader and enforce that discipline on the shadow cabinet. I don't agree with the policy, but I understand why he's removed Sam Tarry, who was the MP, from his front bench. I think with the strikes generally, I don't think people are striking because they want to go on strike. I think they're striking because they can't pay their energy bills, they can't feed their families. And I think it's a great shame that we don't have stronger trade unions in sectors like Amazon or the fast food industry, so workers can actually take a stand there. But it's incredibly hard to organise in those industries. So at Amazon, for example, you've had union reps from the GMB trying to hand out forms in the car park and then get chased off by security and the police called. So it's not easy to actually organise in those sectors.
Yeah. Let's finish off with just something, just very, very briefly, something a little bit lighter, which is J-Lo stripping off in the song.
Yeah, I just put this in a sensitive issue for me. I keep, it pays to advertise, so I keep mentioning it's my birthday. I like to make a week of it on Saturday. And it's just about ageism, really. It's actually written by Ulrika Johnson, who I can do without her posing naked in the sun, well, at least once a week. But it's a question of whether people like Jennifer Lopez and Gwyneth Paltrow, candles aside, don't want one, should be posing nude
at 53.
At their age. Well, if you can have a beautiful body at 53. You can have a rubbish body that you don't look after at 23. Now, if they want to show off how they look after themselves and keep healthy, the fundamental issue here is that women over a certain age, i.e. post-menopausal, aren't supposed to have any sexuality at all. That's it, girls. Pack up. You've had your day. Put your cardi on.
Yeah.
And it's wrong. And I'm glad women like that are making a stance.
As long as they're not photoshopped.
Oh, no.
False, then,
no, I don't agree with that.
Realistic.
Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm all for it. I mean, I just think if it's their choice and it's then it's great.
Yeah.
But it's got to be down to people's choice. Not for voyeurism or anything like that, but just to say if they want to show what they look like.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's really forcing J-Lo, are they?
No, but I think why not?
Well, you get what I mean about the age.
Well, no one bats an eyelid at Tom Cruise whipping his top off at 60 odd in Top Gun 2, do they?
No.
No, I mean, I think we do live in a youth-obsessed culture, so I think fair enough. I don't see the problem with it at all.
Yeah.
What about Charles Dance coming out of the Med in his shorts from the sea last year? 70 odd, he looked fantastic.
Did he?
Yeah.
Didn't see that one, or either that or I've blanked it out.
Thank you, James. Thank you. It's been a pleasure for joining us this morning on Breakfast.
Excuse me, that's
You're going to need your singing voice in a second, Stephen.
Oh, yes. He's the man behind 90s classics like Mr. Bombastic, Oh Carolina, and It Wasn't Me. I'm glad he's not in the studio. It might hit me now.
And this Sunday, double Grammy Award-winning artist Shaggy is performing at the UK's biggest reggae festival and joins us now to tell us all about it. What did you make of Stephen's very brief rendition?
Yeah, pretty good. Especially since it's, if he sounds anything, it's because it's early. I give him that.
Well, tell us about this festival, because it's at the Milton Keynes Bowl, isn't it?
Yes, Milton Keynes Bowl. It's a big reggae festival. What's great about this is that you get the opportunity to be around your peers. I've done so many festivals on this tour. We've been on tour since around June 6th, around that time, and it's throughout Europe. But this one is really kind of special because it's with all of our reggae peers. You have some great acts on there. Julian Marley, Ika Mouse, all of these really great reggae acts. And I just think it's a fun day for everyone to come out and have a good time.
I mean, it's going to be a great celebration, and I imagine as well. I mean, the stuff you produce has become so legendary in its own right. You are guaranteed a warm welcome, aren't you?
You know what? We've been hitting a lot of concert series. We played a couple of nights ago in Edinburgh, and we continue to go through. And these songs have lasted the test of times, have stood the test of time. They've become classics. They're part of the soundtracks of a lot of people's lives, and they're very, very. We've been getting an incredible reception, as usual, from the audience, and I'm so glad that I'm doing what I'm doing.
So how do you decide what's going to be in your set list? Because presumably you don't want to disappoint people who've come to see an absolute classic, but occasionally you might want to, change things up a little bit.
You are going to have songs that you don't do, and people are going to, because they go in my DM every night and cuss me out about songs they didn't hear. Fans are like that. But if they come back, I used to switch. I normally switch my setup at times. And if they don't hear us at one point, they come another time and they'll hear it. But they'll always hear the big classics. They'll hear the Mr. Bombastic, The Wasn't Me's, Angel, big records like those. In the summertime, Hey Sexy Lady. Those records will always be played.
Yeah, you've got to keep the crowds happy.
Tell me the truth. Do you ever get a little bit bored of doing the same song again and again?
I don't get tired of doing it because these songs. You're only mad when they don't want to hear them.
Right.
I love doing them, man. Because I like the joy that it brings on people's faces when these songs come on. When Oh Carolina comes on, and their hands are in the air and they're screaming and smiling, singing every word to it, that brings me a lot of joy.
Yeah, I bet it does. Look, I was just looking down the list of some people that you've performed for. I mean, you've sang for the Pope, performed for the Pope, at the Queen's birthday at the Royal Albert Hall. You've sat with James Brown and Nelson Mandela, met Prince Harry. I mean, is there anyone you haven't met?
Well, there's a lot of people I haven't met. but as you go through life, man, people pop up into your life and you have this aha moment. It's like, wow, look at me. I'm from Kingston, Jamaica, and I'm here. I'm making an album with Sting. I got him on speed dial. It kind of hits you like, whoa, okay. It's been quite a journey.
Do you ever get that imposter syndrome? I mean, I know we all get it. Our business is nothing compared to yours, but see, sometimes you turn up to work and you think, what am I doing? I'm on the telly this morning. This is just ridiculous, even though I've been doing it for 30 years. Do you ever get that, despite being as huge as you are? Think, what is going on here?
You know what? I worked so hard to over the years, and so when I get up in the morning, it just all comes to me like, okay, it's a job that I'm doing. I'm getting up and I'm doing my job. So no, it doesn't really hit me like, oh wow, look at that, I'm on telly. It's really something I get up and I work hard to, and we're doing so many things. I'm at a stage in my career that I could do great things and do things that I like. We recently just did an album produced by Sting of Frank Sinatra album, Frank Sinatra songs in reggae. And so I do things that are niche and out the box like that because it's kind of satisfying. So no, I don't have that kind of moment. I really work hard at what I do. So I'm like, oh, wherever I'm at, I'm like supposed to be there.
Just tell you what, that sounds amazing. Frank Sinatra in a reggae style. That sounds absolutely fantastic.
It is. It's great. It's some of the great classics that we've done. We've done them in reggae. It's never been done before. It's me singing these songs. It's Sting producing them. And it's called Come Fly With Me.
Wow. That is something I'm going to look out for. Look, this is... What time's the event on Sunday? Because I know it's at Reggae Land, Milton Keynes Bowl,
I think it's an all-day... It's an all-day performance. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think I'm on at either 8 or 9 o'clock. So...
Perfect.
Somewhere around there.
Milton Keynes Bowl Milton Keynes Bowl has been the site of some amazing concert. I mean, the absolutely huge concert back in the day with Queen playing there, which was absolutely some of the most amazing scenes ever seen in this country at an open-air concert. I mean, it's quite a venue, despite it's just a field, basically.
Well, hey, I'm in good company, it seems. So, yes.
Great stuff.
They should come and have a good time.
Well, it's great to talk to you, Shaggy. Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate your time today.
Much love, man. Much love. Thank you.
What a nice man.
So nice, so gentle.
Yeah. It's funny, those tunes just come back to you, though, don't they?
They do. It's been going around in my head. Your rendition as well, which I did very much enjoy, which you've had twice now on the show.
I'll do it again in the break.
We don't really have an opportunity for it to come because we go back to politics in a few minutes' time. We're going to be speaking to the Culture Secretary, Nadine Dorries. Of course, the Commonwealth Games gets underway today. We've been live in Birmingham with our reporter there to sort of see how the city's gearing up. So don't miss that interview to come, and more of your views as well, particularly on how you're handling the cost of living. Don't go anywhere.
Hello there, and welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. It is going to be a largely dry day ahead this Thursday. There'll be some sunny spells and feeling quite warm as well. So let's look at the reason for this. Is high pressure is still dominating our weather pattern, meaning it is generally dry out there for the next 24 hours or so. And that's the case this morning. There'll be lots of dry weather across the UK under the influence of this high pressure, with the exception, though, of northern England, southern parts of Scotland. Cloudy start here with some patchy rain, but this should soon start to fizzle out. And then for many, a bright day to come, plenty of sunny spells developing. Always thickest cloud across northern parts of England, southern Scotland. A few showers across central and northern parts of Scotland too. But lots of dry weather to come, and in those bright or sunny spells, temperatures lifting high teens, low 20s, and 24 or 25 as a high towards the London area. So feeling quite warm. Into the evening time, sunshine to end the day for many. Thicker cloud, though, developing across the central spine of the UK means during the early hours it could just become thick enough for 1 or 2 light outbreaks of rain. But elsewhere, generally clear skies holding on and keeping it dry. But despite those clear skies, it will be a mild night. Temperatures 11 to 15 in the towns and cities, perhaps a little bit lower in the countryside. So sunny but mild start to Friday morning, with the exception of the Pennines and Northern Hills here. We could just see 1 or 2 splashes of light rain where we do have thicker cloud. But otherwise, dry day to come on Friday. 1 or 2 light showers developing across the southeast of England with the heat of the day. 1 or 2 later on across northern parts of England, southern Scotland. And a warm feeling day. Temperatures low 20s for many, locally high 20s, 26 or 27 towards the southeast. And into the weekend, we see an increasing risk of some rain, particularly across the north and the west of the UK. Temperatures around average, but staying above across southern areas. And here we could see highs approaching 28 or 29 by Sunday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
The Commonwealth Games kick off today in Birmingham.
Good morning to you. It is 9 o'clock. It's Thursday, the 28th of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Rosie.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The 22nd Commonwealth Games kicks off today in Birmingham with an opening ceremony at the city's Alexander Stadium. More than 5,000 athletes representing 72 nations and territories will take part in 11 packed days of events.
Energy prices are estimated to reach £3,850 a year this winter as Putin cuts gas supplies to Europe. The squeeze will mean the average customer could, following another rise potentially in January, be then paying £500 a month, £6,000 a year.
And in a first for the English legal system, television cameras will be broadcast from the Old Bailey. From now on, broadcasters will be allowed to apply to film sentencing in Crown Courts in England and Wales, but they will be highly restricted.
Well, you can join in any of our discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
Well, we're going to go live to Birmingham very shortly and speak to Nadine Dorries. Before that, though, the cost of living. It's been one of our key stories this morning because we're looking at the looming, absolutely astronomical price rises in our already expensive gas and electricity bills. And we're talking about, come January, bills of about £500 a month. Loads of you are getting in touch this morning.
Yeah, £6,000 a year. Can you imagine paying that? And that's the average. That's the average. So it's just totally unsustainable for most people. I mean, it's not even an option, probably, to pay that much money. We're going to talk about that with Nadine Dorries. She's at the Commonwealth Games, which is the official opening in Birmingham this morning. It's the 22nd Commonwealth Games. Let's join her now. And before we talk about the Commonwealth Games, and we will, Nadine Dorries, we've got to ask about the whole cost of living situation. These latest figures don't just mean that people are going to need help in a few years. They're going to mean that people need help now.
So many people across the UK last week will have seen an extra £400 going into their bank accounts. And those people who are both vulnerable and from poorer backgrounds will have seen £1,200 in their bank accounts. So we are helping people right now. That's part of the government's response and the government's measures to helping people face the cost of living, a challenge which is actually a global challenge in every country of the world right now. So we have put money into people's bank accounts to help them deal with those bills which will be arriving on their doormats.
Who are getting in touch with us this morning, though, Nadine, just saying it isn't enough. Bernard got in touch to say, my gas and electricity bill is going to be more than my rent. What would you say to him?
So So I don't know what his rent is, and I don't know what his gas electricity bill are going to be. But what I will say is that the government is taking both a very serious and very coordinated approach to what we know is a serious problem as a result of what's happened in Ukraine, as a result of Putin's barbaric invasion. The government has, this is the top of the government's inbox list of priorities. We've put in measures in place. People have experienced that money, £1,200 for many people, into their bank accounts to help them deal with that problem right now. That is what the government's doing, and as the problem continues, then it's an issue we will continue to address. I can't tell you what policies are going to be put in place in the future. We've got a leadership competition taking place. We'll have a new Prime Minister on September the 5th. It was agreed that there will be no new policy announcements between now and then. And on September the 5th, this, I'm sure, will be the first problem to face a new Prime Minister, and one that will have to be addressed.
And you're backing Liz Truss on that, as we know. What has she said to you? I mean, bits and bobs obviously coming out in these debates and the hustings and everything else. But what has she said to you that assures you that she is the right person to tackle what actually is a huge issue for millions of people?
So it's interesting. Liz has, in recent days, said that the Bank of England mandate needs to be reviewed. And I think that's particularly in light of what we're facing globally in terms of a global economic challenge. And I think it needs to be, Liz and I haven't discussed, she's been out on the road, the economy in any detail over the last few days. But I think what we need on September the 5th is somebody who has fresh, invigorating, stimulating ideas and an approach to the economy. I think that's what Liz is offering. She's not somebody who buys into the Treasury orthodoxy. She's someone who thinks economically outside the box. She understands the value of putting money into people's pockets, and you achieve that. One of the ways to achieve that is with those groups of people who work hard and are taxed hard, that the best way to stimulate the economy is to put money back into their pockets. She understands that raising corporation tax to 25% is not the way you encourage investment or innovation or reward those entrepreneurs who create wealth and create jobs. Liz gets all that, and that's one of the reasons why, for me, she's the person I want to see win on September the 5th.
But what about the inflationary concerns here, which is what Rishi Sunak talks about all the time? Inflation's the big killer here, isn't it? If her policies increase inflation, then we're going to be in a worse position than we are now.
So if Liz kept the borrowing timetable that Rishi keeps to, that would be a problem. But Liz isn't talking about doing that. She's talking about a COVID debt that equates to what we had during the war, a wartime's debt, borrowing over a much longer period of time. You know, COVID was a massive economic impact to the country. It was an economic tremor that hit us, hit the world. And what Liz is saying is that we need a different approach to deal with that. Business as usual, borrowing as usual, isn't going to fix it. We need to look at the debt we've taken on to deal with COVID in the same way that we looked at the debt that we incurred in fighting the Second World War. And that's thinking outside the box. That's looking at a different way of both servicing and managing debt. And that in itself will negate any problems that we have in terms of inflationary increases. And that's what I like about Liz. She's refreshing. She's not selling the same old story that, you know, we've got one of the highest tax rates, one of the highest tax countries, I think it's 70% in the world. Liz isn't talking about business as usual. She's talking about making this country a place that has an invigorating economy and a place where people want to invest and list and stay. And her ideas are exciting, and I think that's the reason why she will be best placed to help people with those economic tremors that will come our way in the future, and help people deal with and address the cost of living crisis. And I know that she's the right person to do that.
Your cost of living will be front and centre at that hustings taking place today, the first of 12 between the two candidates. In the meantime, you're in Birmingham, and it's a really exciting day. We've got 11 action-packed days ahead of us. What can we look forward to at the Commonwealth Games?
So and it's not just the Commonwealth Games. We've got the Lionesses at Wembley on Sunday night too. So it is. I mean, Birmingham is buzzing. This is a Commonwealth Games that's been delivered in 4.5 years, on time, on budget. It would normally take 7 years. We've picked the baton up from Durban, who dropped it a number of years ago. And you can see the impact of what has been a government investment of £600 million, incredible organisation, thousands of athletes here, thousands of volunteers, and the city is buzzing. And the Commonwealth Games will leave a legacy here for Birmingham, and that legacy will be, at the very least, the aquatic centre, newly built, purpose-built aquatic centre over in Sandwell, which I've visited a number of times myself, and the fact that Birmingham is now on the map. It was before, but it's even more so now because of the Commonwealth Games. The West Midlands and Birmingham have had the investment and will benefit from the investment that's come into the Commonwealth Games. So it's all good news here, and it's all positive, and we just hope and pray that that will be topped off on Sunday night with the Lionesses in Wembley.
Well, let's hope so. Nadine Dorries, it's good to talk to you this morning. Thank you.
And you, thank you.
Now, we do quite well with legends in this studio.
Well, even just in the last sort of... well, in the last hour.
Sort of half hour, so yeah. And this year, believe it or not, if you're of an age, you'll remember, marks the 50th anniversary of the hit song Alone Again, naturally, which made singer Gilbert O'Sullivan the biggest selling British artist in the world at the time.
Well, now he's back with a new album, Driven. We're delighted to say he joins us now to tell us all about it. Thank you very much for coming in, and congratulations.
Thank you, Rosie.
Driven, what's the essence of it?
Well, because when people say, you know, you have this discipline about working 9 to 5 when you write songs, so it's that drive in me. So Driven is a kind of apt title, because it's pretty much how I am when it comes to terms of songwriting. I mean, because it's that important. Without the songs, I wouldn't be here. So.
But why? I mean, can you believe it is 50 years since Alone Again, naturally? I mean, 50 years.
The numbers game kind of frightens me and stuff.
It does.
I live in today and tomorrow and stuff, but I'm happy at the past. I mean, things like the 50th anniversary. For example, Neil Diamond did a version of that song just recently and sent me a letter hoping that I liked it. And stuff. I thought it was really nice. And then Michael Bublé and Diane Krall. So the versions I get of that song at the present are fantastic.
And in the last 50 years, there's been many sort of iterations of that song, many covers. How does it feel to have something that's so crafted, that's so part of sort of you and your career, to see other people sort of give a stab at it?
Well, that's it. As I say, like Neil Diamond, Dan Kroll, Michael Bublé, Sarah Vaughan, Nina Simone. There's been many versions.
Nina Simone do a version.
And I was a huge fan of Nina Simone. So Bobby Darin did a version of it.
Wow.
It's going back before time. But it's a great compliment to you as a writer when other people perform your song. Even if the Postman was to do it, it would be a compliment. So.
Yeah. Can you imagine? I mean, because you're 75 now.
Right.
To do that at 25.
Well, I was younger actually. It was about 23. Well,
I mean, you look back at it and just go, God, I was just a kid.
But the song at the time was just, along with the other songs I was writing, it didn't seem any more special. And that's the great thing about our business, the unpredictability of what can be a success, the luck, the timing, the judgment that comes into play.
Yeah.
So I was happy with the song, but nobody said, wow, this could change your life. So, but I'm happy with it, as I am today. I mean, to get a new album released is my 20th album, so it's really exciting. And the interesting thing is, I've had the best reviews in 50 years for this album, which is quite incredible.
Yeah, I was... Here, this is from Shindig. At the age of 75, Gilbert O'Sullivan has just gone and recorded his best ever album.
No, it's amazing. Yeah. I don't read reviews. My daughter, who works for social media, when I see them jumping up and down and looking at them, then I figure something good must happen.
You said that the writing process is like a sort of 9 to 5.
Sure.
But lots of creative people that come on this programme that we talk to, they say actually it can't be sort of handled in that same way. So how does it work for you? Do you literally sit down and try and think, or does something pop into your mind?
It stems from there's a famous building in New York called the Brill Building, owned by a publisher called Don Kirshner. And people like Carole King, Neil Diamond, Neil Sedaka used to go in at night, clock in at 9 o'clock in the morning and stay there till 5 o'clock to write songs. So I apply that discipline to what I do. If I have to write songs, 9 o'clock, I'll go up to the music room and I'll sit there throughout the day, 5 days a week, 4 weeks a month, if necessary, till I come up with the amount of material that I need. That discipline is very important because that's what gets you through. And of course, the exciting thing is when you do finish what you think is a good song, that to you is, in many ways, is a success.
I love the fact that looking at the track listing, you've got Take Love, featuring Katie Tunstall, who's fantastic. And one of my favourite, I think he's got the most amazing voice, Let Bygones Be Bygones, featuring Mick Hucknall. I love Mick.
Well, the thing is that my producer, Andy Wright, produces Simply Red. And I knew that Mick was a fan because I'd met him at a charity show to say hello. So he said to Andy, his producer, he said, look, if Ray, he knows me as Ray, if Ray's got a song on his new album that he'd like me to sing, I'd love to do it. And so we sent it to him. It's a softer sounding Mick, not the kind of loud Mick that you're kind of used to. So it's a real honour for him to take part. And then Katie Tunstall. I mean, Katie, she lives in California, and we approached her. She loved the song. We just said, sing what you want. She did a great version of it. And the nice thing was she came back to London and we did a video together. That was the first time I met her. So that was really fun to do.
I don't think you'll mind me asking this. It came up earlier. We were talking about imposter syndrome. For someone who's had the sort of length of career that's been so successful and people saying, you know, this is the best thing you've ever written. Do you ever get that? Do you feel, oh, why am I doing this? I'm not good enough at this.
No, I'm pretty happy with I'm pretty happy with the way things are and stuff. You know, I love the work that I do and the support I get from the record company. And then I get out to do, you know, you can't have a record without going out there to promote it.
Yeah.
And one of the best ways to promote is to appear in front of a live audience.
Oh, yeah. It's that live interaction.
Concerts are fantastic.
Yeah.
And maybe there's something about that discipline, that work structure that just really gives you confidence in authority in what you're doing.
I think, Rosie, when you get to my age, you need that discipline. Otherwise, it's like, do I need to go out and sit up there for all this time? But it's the love of the craft.
Does it help? Do you have a bit of a split life, if you like? I mean, you're Gilbert to us, but then what Ray to people who know you better. Does that help, that sort of divider?
I think so. It's. I mean, I live in Jersey in the Channel Islands, and I keep a very low profile and stuff because that's my home. I kind of like to feel when I'm at home, everything's kind of normal. When I go away for touring and promotion, Japan, Australia, and America, then you become the kind of the singer that you are.
Yeah.
Well, you're releasing this on cassette tape.
I know. Can you believe that?
Why?
Well, that's an interesting subject. We were talking about this last night, and I said to this person with the record, I said, why are people buying cassettes? He said, they're buying it not to listen to. They're buying it as a merchandising thing.
Yeah.
They've got the CD, they've got the vinyl, and now they want the cassette. But I do all my writing on cassettes. So I don't use digital devices because I have the 70s Getter Blasters, which would have like an inbuilt microphone either side.
Yeah.
And I plonk it on the piano, and I just stick in cassettes. That's how I write, because I don't need my glasses to look at what I'm doing. With the digital formats, I kind of need glasses, so I kind of got rid of the digital format.
Love it. You need a bit of merch. I love the fact you've got a limited edition clear LP out as well.
The vinyl, vinyl is very popular.
It's huge now, isn't it?
So it's incredible that these versions come out and stuff. Vinyls are on the increase. I think a lot of people who buy vinyl, they have the CD to listen to. They like the vinyl because it's a large cover.
Yeah.
So there's an attraction for that.
Yeah. Oh, mind you, I've talked to my brother, so it's all about the quality. It's all about the quality, the hiss and the crackle. Loves all of that.
Yeah, that's the great thing with vinyl. You get that real kind of
it's a bit more intimate somehow. Gilbert O'Sullivan, I can't quite believe I've been chatting to you this morning.
It's nice to talk to you, Rosie.
Oh, well, that's very kind. Thank you for coming in.
Good to see you. Thank you so much.
Good to be here.
Oh, there you go. So Gilbert O'Sullivan's album Driven is out now, and as we say, featuring Katie Tunstall and Mick Hucknall. Wow, fantastic. There you go.
Right now, it is 18 minutes past 9. Coming up on the programme, Netflix are releasing a new documentary series about revenge porn. We're going to speak to a victim's mother who features in the show. That's coming up.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
9:20 now. If you were a fan of shows like The Tinder Swindler on Netflix, you're going to be interested in their new docuseries called The Most Hated Man on the Internet, which was released this week.
Well, it centres around a man called Hunter Moore, who posted thousands of revenge porn pictures of various people onto his website, isanyoneUp.com. Let's have a quick look at the trailer.
I woke up, you wake up, you look at your phone, 200 notifications.
There it was, topless, multiple photos. It was an absolute shock.
I got posted on the site.
IsanyoneUp.com. I felt violated.
Humiliation. That site was about destroying lives. Who would create a website like this?
Well, the answer to that is Hunter Moore. That is, until he was taken down by one of the victims' mothers, who joins us now, Charlotte Laws, who joins us from Los Angeles. Good to see you, Charlotte, this morning. The sort of longer trailer earlier on, it is absolutely unbelievable that he could not only do this, but flaunt what he was doing so outrageously.
Yeah, it was just about hatred. It was about humiliation. It was about ruining lives. It was about driving women to suicide. It was not about nudity or pornography. It was really extremely disturbing. I mean, it was really quite amazing. And I think the documentary does a good job depicting the horror of that website.
Horrific sentiment and motivation and the damage it did to victims. So explain to us, if you can, what happened to your daughter and how you felt when you realised that these pictures of her had been made public in such a vile way.
Well, she was hacked, and she found out about it when she was at her waitress job, and she could barely even finish her shift. She called me right away and said, "Something horrible happened, Mom." And I had never heard of revenge porn until that moment. And I went on the website and I was shocked to see what it was. And I knew that, a topless picture like that would simply populate in cyberspace. It's not going to go away. And I knew that time was of the essence and I would have to very quickly get this down. I hoped that I would be able to just send an email to Hunter Moore and get him to remove it. But that did not work. And there were many people online that said he will not remove pictures. And so I realized I had to become an investigator. I had been a private detective in the 1980s, and I had to investigate him and figure out what this site was all about and figure out a way to get my daughter's picture down.
I mean, what is remarkable, if you don't mind me saying, is the fact that your absolute determined effort to deal with this. I mean, a lot of people you can see would be banging their heads against a brick wall with this one, thinking, I just don't know what to do. You seemed absolutely determined that this was not going to stop you.
Yeah, I mean, Hunter Moore was very obsessed with the site. I mean, it's like he didn't even sleep. He was so into this. And I knew I would have to be just as determined, just as obsessed to get that picture down. And I very quickly figured out there was a hacking scheme because my daughter's friend was also posted and she had been hacked. And so I thought to myself, I only know 2 people on this website and they were both hacked. So it looks to me like there's a hacking scheme, and probably the website owner is involved in that. And so it became the chore to prove the hacking, and I eventually got the FBI involved, and I did my own investigation and started reaching out to various victims on the site to find out how they got on there. And based on my study, 40% of them had been hacked, and we knew based on the email address that it was the same hacker in many of the cases. And so that's kind of how I proceeded. But it was, it was 2 years of work. I mean, it was really something that I had to put everything aside and put all my attention onto this website, because it wasn't just about my daughter anymore. Now I had connections with all these other victims, so I had to get their pictures down. I felt it was important to also help them and get them down, and also to get the website removed. So it became this big mission, essentially.
You were in a fortunate situation where your daughter rang you to tell you straight away and say, Mum, I need help with this. Lots of people, you can imagine, the shame would be so raw that you would find it really difficult to do that. What advice would you give to parents, and also maybe their teenagers and even their children listening this morning, to prevent them getting into this situation?
Well, I mean, you should always have open lines of communication, with your children, and, they should always know that they can come to you and they can talk to you about anything. I think that's really important. But it is true that victims don't want to tell anyone. And they also can't usually fight for themselves. They feel so traumatized and so victimized that they just want to shut down their entire social media. They want to just crawl into a hole and not even, associate with anyone anymore. 50% of revenge porn victims contemplate suicide, and 93% suffer severe emotional distress. So it is something to be taken seriously. And and if you do become a victim, there are resources out there. I know in the UK, you have a helpline. We have a hotline here in the United States as well. And if you become a victim and you need legal assistance, you can do a Google search for the Cyber Civil Rights Legal Project, and they will help victims pro bono, both in the United States and in the UK. So those are some resources for people if you get into the situation.
Tell you what, it's amazing to talk to someone who has been so determined, and as a result proving to be, I should think, inspirational to many people who find themselves in this situation. Charlotte Laws, really good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.
That is pretty much it from us this morning.
It is. You get a day off tomorrow, don't you?
I do. I'll be back here on Sunday. You'll be here tomorrow.
Oh, yes. I'm here tomorrow with Ellie from 6 o'clock, and Tom Harwood is up next with the briefing.
Hello there, and welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. It is going to be a largely dry day ahead this Thursday. There'll be some sunny spells and feeling quite warm as well. So let's look at the reason for this. Is high pressure is still dominating our weather pattern, meaning it is generally dry out there for the next 24 hours or so. And that's the case this morning. There'll be lots of dry weather across the UK under the influence of this high pressure, with the exception, though, of northern England, southern parts of Scotland. Cloudy start here with some patchy rain, but this should soon start to fizzle out. And then for many, a bright day to come, plenty of sunny spells developing, always thick as cloud across northern parts of England, southern Scotland, a few showers across central and northern parts of Scotland too, but lots of dry weather to come, and in those bright or sunny spells, temperatures lifting high teens, low 20s, and 24 or 25 as a high towards the London area, so feeling quite warm. Into the evening time, sunshine to end the day for many. Thicker cloud, though, developing across the central spine of the UK means during the early hours it could just become thick enough for one or two light outbreaks of rain. But elsewhere, generally clear skies holding on and keeping it dry. But despite those clear skies, it will be a mild night. Temperatures 11 to 15 in the towns and cities, perhaps a little bit lower in the countryside. So a sunny but mild start to Friday morning, with the exception of the Pennines and Northern Hills here. We could just see 1 or 2 splashes of light rain where we do have thicker cloud. But otherwise, dry day to come on Friday. 1 or 2 light showers developing across the southeast of England with the heat of the day. 1 or 2 later on across northern parts of England, southern Scotland. And a warm feeling day. Temperatures low 20s for many, locally high 20s, 26 or 27 towards the southeast. And into the weekend, we see an increasing risk of some rain, particularly across the north and the west of the UK. Temperatures around average, but staying above across southern areas. And here we could see highs approaching 28 or 29 by Sunday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.